Buenas noches, gente. Buenas noches a este nueva sección que vamos a tener en mi canal, Kyle Rayner Reviews. Esta sección que la verdad que es una sección que hace rato que quería tener y que quería empujar a desarrollar. Y gracias a Dios la pude llevar adelante y nada más y nada menos con figuras de primer nivel. Ya van a ver quiénes son, pero esto no lo voy a hacer solo, voy a hacerlo con mi copartner en la aventura, el señor Mario Luz Uriaga.
Kilowog aquí, porque si somos de los Green Lantern Corps, voy a ser Kilowog.
Totalmente.
La verdad que una fiesta lo que vamos a vivir en segundos. No quiero decir más nada.
Totalmente. No quiero perder más tiempo porque la verdad que estoy muy emocionado con nuestro invitado. Tengan paciencia que vamos a hablar en inglés porque es un artista internacional. Quiero darle una gran presentación al maestro directamente, Mr. Jerry ORDWAY.
Hello, everybody.
Thank for
you
accepting this interview, Mr. ORDWAY. It's a great pleasure to have you here. I'm a big fan of your work. I grew up with your work. Also, Mario, I think, grew up with your work.
Both of us, we grew up with your job. So, sir, thank you for giving us the hope and the joy of enjoying these comic books. So thank you so much.
Thank
sir.
you. Nice. Thanks for saying that.
First of all, I would like to ask you how you begin in the comic business. How do you begin reading comics, and how you got introduced in the comic business?
Wait a minute. I want to translate to the people who doesn't speak English or doesn't understand. So, Kyle nos dice que, bueno, le está preguntando al señor ORDWAY cómo fueron sus inicios en los cómics y qué fue lo que primero leyó.
Am I ready to go?
Yeah, ready to go.
I read comics from the time I was a little kid. I can remember reading Superman and Batman comics from probably the early 60s, early 1960s. But I don't read, I think my biggest influence was Marvel Comics, starting around the time of the Batman TV show, would have been like 1966. Marvel had a cartoon show on TV in the United States, and I used to come home from school and watch every day. It was just exciting. And then I found that there were comics, like maybe a year after watching the cartoon show, I wound up going on a train trip to my brother's college graduation, and my older brother. And I found comic books at the train station, and I was amazed that they had, Thor and Captain America and Iron Man and the Hulk and all these characters. So that was my introduction to those comics. And from the time I saw those, I just knew that it was special to me, and I wanted to. I don't know how I would do it, but I started drawing, Marvel characters at that point. I was definitely inspired enough to draw, and then I started drawing my own characters, and I wound up in commercial art, drawing just boring stuff. And I'd always wanted to do comics, but I didn't know how, and I got turned down when I went up to DC Comics in 1977 and got rejected because they just weren't hiring. So in 1980, they had a talent search at the Chicago Comic Convention, and I went to that and waited in line, and the rest was history, I guess, because I got chosen out of the group to get work, and I started working in the summer of 1980. So it's been, 40 years, which is kind of crazy.
Whoa.
Well, we're going to translate everything. So just let us a second. Bueno, Kyle, ¿querés traducirle lo que nos contaba Jerry?
Sí, básicamente que él empezó de chico a leer cómics. Los primeros cómics que leyó fueron aquellos que encontraba en los puestos de diario, que era el Capitán América, eran Iron Man, eran Thor, tenía que ver todo, más que nada, con la etapa de Jack Kirby. Jack Kirby, Thor.
It was a great influence for you, Jack Kirby, or another
my
writer
biggest
or artist?
Marvel groups was probably John Romita Sr. on Spider-Man, and John Buscema on the Avengers. Those were my favorite as a kid. I mean, I love Kirby, but I think as a kid, the Avengers and Spider-Man and Daredevil were my three favorite titles. And so Gene Colan was drawing Daredevil at that time, and those probably had more influence, I think, artistically on me. I can still think of the John Romita Sr. drawing Gwen Stacy and Peter Parker and all those characters, even more so because he was the current artist when I started buying those comics.
Right.
So I didn't really know who Steve Ditko was until I started buying back issues, and I love Steve Ditko, I love Kirby, all those guys. They were just not even just the guys, but Maurice Severin was an important part of that. But that entire group was just my childhood.
Bueno, nos decía que su gran influencia sería John Romita Sr. y que si bien después de su favorito, que como cualquiera de nosotros nos puede haber pasado que nuestro Batman sería el de Jim Aparo o el de otros, bueno, el de él fue John Romita Sr., perdón, y que después de ahí empezó a conocer los otros autores como Kirby y demás autores, ¿no? Como Steve Ditko y tantos otros. I have a question for you. Do you read the Daredevil in the yellow suit?
Daredevil, I know of it. When I was reading it, he already had the red suit.
Of course.
The Marvel Daredevil. Yeah. I have that's one of the few titles that I actually have a complete series up through, I think, the Frank Miller issues, but I do have back issues from #1 on with Daredevil, because it was I don't know if you collect comic books much, but when you buy old comics, they're very expensive.
So you're actually a collector of comics also.
Oh yeah, I've got a big collection.
Oh,
What's your gem on your collection, for example?
You mean my favorite or my oldest?
No, only
whatever you want.
Yeah, in that order.
In that order. Both.
I have Spider-Man issues very early on, but I don't have a complete run. I have a lot of Avengers. I'm missing like #1, and you know what I mean? I would have like #2, #4, #5, 6, 7, whatever. I have the early ones. They're not in beautiful shape, but they're ones that a lot of them I got when I was a kid that I bought at secondhand stores before the comic market really became a big market in its own.
Yeah.
It was usually you would go to a store that sold used clothing, and they'd have a couple of bags of comic books in the back, and you'd go through them, and nothing was very expensive. It was all comic books for $0.25 or something. So there were finds, like in the classic nerd sense, when you find something that is worth something to you, and you can actually buy it because you have $0.25 in your pocket. You have money.
Nowadays, those comic books are very valuable.
Who would imagine that? Who would imagine that a quarter comic would sale now for, I don't know, $5,000. I don't
Yeah,
know.
there's some they're even more. I mean, I was even when I was a kid, you couldn't buy Fantastic Four comics. The early issues they were already prices were too expensive. So I didn't get a lot of the early ones because it was out of my price range. Because when you're a kid, you don't. I used to do odd jobs and things like that to get comic book money. But I bought everything Marvel published, so I was always broke. I never had, whatever money I made, I bought.
We are broke too here. We are broke. We are broke now here in Argentina because they are redoing these things. So a few weeks ago, they launched this thing.
Yeah,
Crisis on Infinite Earth. So this is the first time.
Sorry, Mario.
Yes. So
it's the first Argentinian edition of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Wow, that's cool.
So it was a whole event here. And
are they done as individual issues, or is it the whole story in one book?
It's the whole story with the compendiums and also history of the DC universe.
Yeah. So the whole
and also the special issue by Marv Wolfman from Legends of the DC universe.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which contains a story between issue 3 and 4, I think. It was a very complete edition, very cool indeed.
Didn't I worked on the Legends story, didn't I? That was the one that had
yes.
It was the guard. I remember drawing the Guardian, the DC, the Jack Kirby character, the Guardian, saving some people, and I think George Perez inked me on that. I think we flipped it. Oh, he was originally supposed to pencil it, and then for whatever reason he couldn't, and then he inked it. It was the whatever background storyline that was happening in between Crisis, or somehow it fit into the story, but I don't.
Since you're speaking about inking and drawing, what do you enjoy most, writing or drawing comics?
I like everything. I mean, it really is hard to choose. I like my ideal is to write and draw my own, but I like collaboration as well. It depends. I think I like characters more than I like the process. Like I would be fine drawing Justice Society with like when Jeff Johns was writing it. It was great. It was fun. His stories were great. Certain characters, like I like the idea of writing Superman. I like the idea of writing Shazam. Probably because I did that for a long time. So it's harder to say do a Shazam story with some other writer. It would be harder to, I guess it depends on who the writer would be. But I like all aspects of it. I've liked inking. I just don't like to do anything all the time. Like inking is a good, fun exercise to take a break from penciling. So the variety of it is fun. I mean, I think anything that you'd have to do full time or whatever, you need to find something that maybe gets you excited. Otherwise, you're just in the same kind of groove, and it can get boring. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
I want to ask you a question. I want to ask you a question because this is something I wanted to ask you. It's hard to write a character like Superman, so powerful, so like a god for us.
Honestly, the key to hit Superman was always that, like when I was working on Superman, I never thought of him as like that super powerful guy who was going to push a planet. You know what I mean? I always thought of him as Clark Kent. And I think that's the way to, I mean, that was the way I wrote Superman. I liked it best to write him as like a normal guy because he was raised on Earth and that was his real personality, and Superman was his put on personality. It's like Superman was like cosplay for him in a way. He could do all those things as Clark Kent, but when he was Superman, he stood taller and he acted more of the hero, but he had the same abilities that he had as Clark. So it was easier to write him as a regular person. I could relate to him as a reader in that way as well, because it was about his relationships with his friends at the Daily Planet, and that was the key. I never thought more about who would beat who in a fight. Fans would always ask me, would Superman beat the Hulk, or would Superman beat Thor? I would say, it's like with any fight, it would depend. And I never really like to get into the, here's his power level. That never interested me, because when I was growing up, we had, the greatest, Muhammad Ali was an amazing boxer. And during the 70s, he seemed unbeatable, but then somebody beats him. So, I always thought of that as a way to look at a hero, is that everybody has a good day, everybody has a bad day. So on any given day, maybe the Hulk could beat Superman, maybe Superman would beat the Hulk, So their power levels could be pretty closely matched, but it really didn't matter who was more strong at any given moment. It was just that, based on the fight, anything can happen. The underdog can win too. I always liked, talking about a Marvel reader, there's a great story that was in the Daredevil comic where Daredevil fights Submariner. And it was one of my favorite, as a back issue. I probably spent like several, I don't know how it would relate money-wise, but when I was a kid, if you had a comic book cost 12 cents or 15 cents, and if a back issue cost $15, that was a fortune. So that was, I remember that I used my birthday money to buy this issue of Daredevil. It's a great story. It's Daredevil trying to stop Submariner, and he's just a regular, normal human with his radar senses, and Submariner is super strong. And that story imprinted on me I think as a writer as well, because there's all the drama of the regular guy going up against great odds, and he doesn't win, but he does his best, and at the end of the story, Submariner looks at Daredevil and he says, "I've never seen such courage," or whatever. He's impressed that this normal guy was so tenacious to keep fighting him, trying to stop him. So that's the type of story that I think I've always liked. And as a writer, I've always liked that idea of having a character fight beyond their means, rise to the occasion, what have you. And that's the story of Superman and Doomsday, Superman and Doomsday being matched. So those are appealing. I think they're appealing to read. They're obviously fun to write, but as a reader, that's the type of thing I would love and always did love.
That sentiment you spoke about, Daredevil, is well portrayed on the Marvel movies with Captain America, with his famous phrase, "I can do this all day," when he fights the impossible,
Well, that wasn't you saw the Avengers Endgame, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That moment where Captain America goes up against Thanos, I just felt almost like tears in the audience. It was like, oh, that was such a great moment, because it's that guy who, is fighting out of his weight class, but he's got heart and he's going to give it his all. And if he gets killed, he's going to get killed, but he's not going to be, bullied. And that's the whole appeal.
He will die with honor, of course.
Yeah. For a dramatic story, I don't know, does that happen in real life? I think there are people who are heroic and they rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
I do think that's part of it's probably in all of us, you know, to it just needs a trigger at some point. You need something that triggers you. But I think that's the best of humanity. There's so many horrible aspects of humanity, but the idea that someone is willing to put themselves on the line for another person or a group of people, I think is very noble. You know, that's what a hero is.
Yes, most of Superman stories do that. Inspire us to be good people. Inspire us to get our better selves. You know.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I have a few slides with your art I would like to speak about. So if you don't mind, here's are the slides.
I'm going to say, voy a decir algo mientras Kyle estás pasando las slides. Mr. O, here the people who is in the chat live, they're giving you many comments about you, and thank you to be here with us.
Oh, well, again, my pleasure. Thank you.
So here we go, Mr. ORDWAY. What can you tell us about your run on All-Star Squadron, your glorious run on All-Star Squadron with legends with like Roy Thomas? It's
I mean, it was I was a young guy. It was my first regular assignment. That my first monthly assignment from DC Comics was to do All-Star Squadron inking it.
Yeah.
And I was a really good fit for it because, again, I liked the era. I mean, I've always liked history, and it's a kind of a different challenge to draw a comic book set in a specific time. In this case, it was set in 1941. So that was a challenge, and I enjoyed that, and I still do. I still enjoy the research, but it was fun. Roy was my favorite from, again, childhood as a writer of the Avengers. It was definitely I could see that he was trying a lot of the same things he did with the Avengers with All-Star Squadron, where he basically took mostly second string characters and made a team out of them, and Hawkman or Dr. Fate or Green Lantern would show up as the big name, character, but generally it was the core characters were, Johnny Quick and Liberty Bell and Robot Man, and that was kind of fun because those characters weren't as well known. So I think there was more for him he could do more with them without fans having a preconceived notion. But it was a fun time, and I started as the inker, and then I worked my way up to penciling the book, and then I went from that to Infinity Inc.
Infinity Inc. That was an amazing job you did. An amazing job you did with such a heart of legacy.
Oh yeah,
because it's about legacy. Infinity Inc. And now on Stargirl they are using this concept. What do you think about the show?
I thought it was great. I after the first episode, I sent Jeff Johns a message. I hadn't talked to Jeff in a while, probably maybe had to be 3 or 4 years, and I just because I knew this was like an important thing for him because it was his first. I think it was his first big DC comic book, to do Stars and Stripe, and so I told him I thought it came out great. I know he had worked on the show as a writer as well. I thought it was great. It seemed like they were setting up Infinity Inc. Really. I mean,
yeah, indeed.
And I hope that in the second season, I'll be curious. I hope that it'd be fun if they showed Alan Scott Green Lantern, and you know what I mean. They hinted at those characters, but it would be fun to see a little flashback stuff maybe with those characters.
When they show up,
yes, and also with Jay Garrick as Flash.
Definitely.
When they showed the Green Lantern, I also thought about Jade and Obsidian, and it was like they must be in this group. They must be in this group.
Well, I think that could happen. I mean, it sounds if you look at the lineup that they put in there, they've got pretty much it was the group that when Todd McFarlane was drawing Infinity Inc. It's that group. So I think it just seems likely that if they keep with whatever they're doing, I mean, and especially if they investigate the Green Lantern part of it, that Jade and Obsidian would be perfect for it, because they were in Infinity Inc. They were really the outsiders from the beginning, because they didn't really. The other heroes were kind of accepted as offspring, or, the Atom was certainly new Nucleon, whereas Jade and Obsidian show up in Infinity Inc. and nobody knows who they are. They're just, they think they're Green Lantern's kids. So they were, story-wise, it would work if they showed up after, like I said, second season, where they got the setup for the new JSA, that they could show up, and then maybe that leads to a Green Lantern story, which would be fun.
It would be awesome and a dream come true,
Yeah.
See those characters come to life, and especially because they tease something about the Seven Soldiers, the Star Spangled Kid. They did so much stuff.
Well, they had the Shining Knight.
They had the Shining Knight.
Yes. I want to ask you a question. What do you think about the new villains that they teased? Eclipso, Shades.
Did they? I know they did they tease Eclipso? Because
yes.
What was that? What episode? Or was that at the end?
It was the last episode where Shiv finds the ruby, the Eclipso rogue in the back on the cave.
Okay. Yeah, that was I wasn't 100% sure what I was seeing there. I was like, what character is this from? Yeah, because I guess I wasn't expecting that, because Eclipso wasn't really part of that, of the stuff I was working on. So, but I like they even allude to the horse for the Shining Knight. He had a winged horse, which is way beyond their capabilities for a TV show. I mean, I don't know how they would do that, but at least they acknowledged it, and they acknowledged the whole team, which was kind of funny. The Seven Soldiers, because they're so obscure. You know what I mean? Very few people, unless you read All-Star Squadron or the Seven Soldiers of Victory, are very obscure. And I always liked them. I mean, I drew one issue of All-Star Squadron that was actually a Seven Soldiers story. I think it was after I want to say it was like, for me, it was like right after I'd finished, but before I started Infinity Inc. And it was fun just because, again, there were characters that really hadn't been seen much. That's the fun part about DC as a company. Same with Marvel, but with DC, they had so many characters in the 1940s. There's so many storylines that you could draw from, and there's so many interesting, even if they're bizarre characters, they were always interesting. You could make something of them if they weren't really developed. I think that's the whole key to the All-Star Squadron book, and right there is the fact that there were so many of these characters that were new to me, even as an audience. A lot of the 1940s material had never been reprinted. A lot of that stuff, only a collector would know those characters existed. So it was a way to introduce them to a 1980s audience, basically. And now people know who the Seven Soldiers were, That's kind of neat. I mean, that's a legacy kind of thing.
It's pretty cool that people of a new generation have access to this kind of information, because a few people know the Seven Soldiers. Most people know the Seven Soldiers incarnation of Grant Morrison,
Right.
the miniseries. So it was a cool part of the TV show. I really like it, and I have great hopes that we could see some of the Infinity Inc.'s members in the next season. So we're gonna go to the next slide.
First of all, Kyle, quiero hacerle una pregunta que esto nos va a tocar a los dos.
Sí.
We love one special character in the TV series, that is Stripesy.
Stripesy.
Stripesy was our our leading character for us. We love it because it's our favorite character. What do you think about the acting of Luke Wilson?
Oh, he's perfect. I mean, it's what I like is that he, again, it's not even about whatever's written on the page. I think certain actors have their own personality, or like a persona that kind of comes through, and he seems like he seems like a good guy, but you could also see, I mean, he plays it really well, because Stripesy was obviously, and sometimes they make fun of him on the show. He was the sidekick, you know, and in a way he builds a giant robot kind of to prove himself, right? Because he was just a regular guy with a striped shirt.
Just like me.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, just like you, Maria.
But that's the appeal. I mean, I think especially for a TV show, I mean, in a comic book, you can only portray. It's like when you do emotion, you can't really do subtlety. Everything is big, you know. I mean, you can't do a subtle expression. You have to do whereas with a TV show where you have movement and human beings, you can portray kind of the humor, and you can, Luke Wilson's perfect because he's got good expressions, and he seems to know how to play those lines. Like the interplay with him and his son is really good, because he's playing between, Stargirl and his own son, and his own son winds up kind of getting ignored. But then there's, I'm hoping that the son has a bigger part as well in the next season, because I think the kid was really, really good.
What are your guess about the boy? My guess.
I was gonna say, I think he probably would be good running the robot, but maybe he gets the Johnny Quick, the Johnny Thunder pen working or something,
That was what I was thinking about, because it was one of the few things that kept there and on the house, and it was something that would be cool to see the whole family fighting together. It's a great TV show. But here is as a Superman fan, as a great fan of your work, here is the big thing. What do you think about Superman, and how was getting the Superman job done in the first place?
How did I get the job, or how
did you get the job?
Well, after Crisis, I talked to the managing editor, who was Dick Giordano, was the managing editor, and he was a super nice guy. He was very fatherly. I mean, he projected that, so he felt like he took me under his wing to a degree. I mean, he seemed like he cared about my career. He liked my work. I had a good relationship with him. And while I was working on Crisis, he told me, what we're going to do after Crisis, we're going to start all the DC titles over with issue number 1. and he said, I'm gonna give you a choice. I'd like you to do either Superman or Batman. And I'm like, wow. And he goes, but I think you're more of a Superman guy. And I was a little disappointed, but then I thought, he's probably right. Because for me, Superman, everything about Superman that I love really is wrapped up in the first Superman movie and with Christopher Reeve's portrayal. I never cared. I wasn't a big fan of Superman 2. I like parts of all of them, but the very first movie, I saw it probably 5 or 6 times in the movie theater. And it's still, every time I watch it, I still get goosebumps, goose flesh when the credits roll and the boom, 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 the theme starts. And just the character, Clark Kent, everything about it is what I was trying to do when I was working on Superman, was that this was a nice guy, and he didn't just project that, but he really was a good guy. He wasn't as conflicted as Batman, and he knew his goals were different, and he truly believed he could make a difference, a positive difference, which I think Batman feels like the guy who takes a bad situation and cleans up. But Superman seemed like the guy who tried to inspire you to clean up on your own by being an example,
Exactly.
So that was a more optimistic view as well. And I just, that was my entire feeling for that character, was wrapped up in that first movie.
Also, I would like to ask you, how was your team up with Mark Wolfman?
It was tough. And I mean, in a good way. It was not a good period for him, which he will admit as well. It was very hard to launch a book.
Yeah.
When he was admittedly out of story ideas and things like that, it was really hard. I mean, I was just there to pencil. I wasn't a big shot. I was just trying to make my deadlines, and we lost Mike Macklin as inker after the very first issue because of delays with scripts and things. So it was just so much pressure. I look back on it and I do see, I think Marv had some good ideas, but he was not focused at the time really well. But I mean, his idea of having Lex Luthor as the businessman, is still a brilliant idea. But it was just not a great working relationship, just because of situations that I had no control of. But I got the, I don't know how you'd put it. Whatever his problems were translated to my problems, even though I had my own problems trying to draw 22 pages a month. It was like adding extra problems. So it was hard for me to even look at it positively, because all I was doing was fighting the deadline. And I mean, I tried to pitch ideas in that first year, and ultimately I kind of forced some of them on the book, like Jose Delgado, Gangbuster. He was kind of forced on against, I don't think Marv wanted to use him, but Mike Macklin and I, we had a studio, and we had kind of come up with him as an alternative to the Guardian, as more of a 1980s version in a way. And so he was important to me as something that would make Adventures of Superman distinct or different from what John Byrne was doing. I mean, that's what you try to do. I was in competition with John because everybody was going to buy John's book, but there was no guarantee that they were going to also buy Marv and my book, So the competition is good. I worked, 110%. And I think, Bibbo was an enduring character that came out of that stuff. Bibbo came from my childhood. It was a character that I grew up with as a little kid. My somebody who was a customer came into my mom's tavern, who was a regular, and he was actually Bibbo, this guy. He was very gentle with my brother Joel and myself. We were little kids. He would walk us to my grandmother's house because my mom worked in the tavern. You know, we lived in the bar, back of the bar, basically, and that was her way of raising her kids, but also being at home. But we got to know all these interesting people who were quite honestly alcoholics. You know, older people who would come to the tavern at 8 o'clock in the morning and they would stay until 8 at night when the place closed. You know, that became kind of a lot of what I did with the Ace of Clubs in my Superman stories. Bibbo's, you know, bought the bar, and there were, you know, that was fun comedy relief for me to do in the Superman books. But so a lot of that came from childhood experience.
I wanted to ask you a question about Superman. You talked about Lex Luthor just a minute ago. What do you like most, the Lex Luthor as a businessman, as a scientist, or as a politician?
I like him as the businessman because, I mean, I find it funny in a way in the 80s. I mean, so much of what we live through nowadays is stuff that cycles. In other words, like the political aspects and the unrest, you know, social unrest. These things were with us in the 60s. When I was growing up, they were with us in the 70s, 80s. There was a period in the 80s where it felt like things were getting better. And, but by that same token, from the 80s on, I've always eyed businessmen very suspiciously because you suddenly you're aware of the environment, you're aware of the fact that companies are polluting rivers and they're polluting, you know, whatever it is. So it's the perfect 1980s and on, like it's the perfect villain. That doesn't mean every businessman is a bad guy, but it's a lot of power in one person. It's kind of like talking about the super rich. It's like, obviously every super rich person is not going to be a terrible person, in the same way that, you know, nobody is all one thing. But if you have the means in your Elon Musk, you're kind of like a super villain. You know, you're putting satellites up to circle the globe, or you're launching a car into space or whatever. That's almost like super villain stuff. You know?
or finding some kind of rock to
right.
to weak Superman, right?
One of the things I wanted to ask you about was something that you mentioned, Jerry, and it was Gangbuster. The Adventures of Superman was a title that really separates from Superman in every way. And when I read it first, it was published, the two titles in a magazine. And I have always enjoyed better the Adventures of Superman because of the art and because I like how Mark Wolfman wrote the title.
Yeah.
And something I really loved from the title was Gangbuster.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know, since it was your pitch, was your idea the Gangbuster identity reveal?
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand.
When Gangbuster reveals his identity to the public,
right.
And it's Superman. That was your pitch.
Yeah. When we first did it, my idea was, because I was a fan of the non-superpowered characters, I wanted to show, I mean, that was the whole point of putting Gangbuster into our book, was the idea that you have a guy who's super powerful, and then you could contrast him with someone like a Daredevil character, which Gangbuster was, somebody who was just a guy with pads on his costume and a club and a helmet. That was it, trying to help people in his neighborhood. So it was the contrast of, even though, I mean, Superman was Superman. Anyways, so putting him in the book, it was a fun part for me because, again, it made the book different than Action Comics or Superman, which Byrne was doing.
Totally.
And it gave you a new character, which is another good thing. Obviously, you always want to put fresh stuff in there. So anyways, jumping forward, after Marv did a year, then John Byrne and I co-plotted the book, and he and I had talked about the idea. He had originally wanted to have Superman basically start questioning himself, and I'm not sure if he had planned to have him kill the Kryptonians, I mean, the Phantom Zone guys in that one storyline, but he had thought about an idea where Superman, being grown up as a human and all that he would have those human weaknesses, and his mind would start to kind of slip, whether it was from the guilt or whatever. So that idea happened, and we had talked about it before he left the book. And he had originally wanted to do have a character show up in Metropolis called Alter Ego, and then it would be revealed as Superman. And I said, and again, this is where I think I was always good at looking at the big picture, because I said to him, I said, if you introduce another new character, you have to spend a lot of time introducing the character and making fans care about him enough to have the reveal be important. I said, Gangbuster exists. He's already established. He wears a helmet. It's perfect. What if Superman, something happens to Gangbuster, we have him get paralyzed, trying to, again, like the little guy fighting against a guy in armor or whatever. He gets hurt, and then set it up for the reader to think maybe Gangbuster is getting his ability to walk again. So you have like a bunch of plausible things, but do a really rough Gangbuster, like I'm now more like Batman. So that was my contribution, was to do that. And then, but John wound up leaving after the Pocket Universe storyline, where he had the Superman kill the Phantom Zone guys. And Roger Stern and I picked up that same storyline, and we refined it a little bit, but we made it totally about Superman's guilt for having executed these criminals, which is what he did. I mean, he was on a different world, but he still did execute them. And we wanted that. It was like, there's the perfect, if anything's going to fracture your brain or fracture your mind or your conscience or whatever, it would be something like that. It was something that he was just something that he would regret. And so, yeah, that was there were a lot of things that happened on the book that happened like that just felt like they fell into place, and you couldn't have planned it better. If we knew right in the beginning, we did a storyline with the crossover for Millennium, where there were manhunters on Earth that were watching all the heroes. They were all supposed to be close to the heroes to watch the rise of the heroes in case they became dangerous, and then the manhunters would quarantine Earth or whatever that storyline was about. And again, I was sitting there with John. We were talking about stories, plotting stuff, and he said that he wanted to have Cat Grant be revealed as the Manhunter. And I said, if Cat Grant is established, I said, it felt like I was I didn't want to have to lose her, because I didn't know if these characters were going to die or disappear afterwards. So I was kind of defensive. And I said, well, Cat Grant is a good character, but if you want a character who's watching Superman from his childhood, Lana Lang is the perfect Manhunter. And he went, oh, that is better. So it became Lana Lang. And that's the fun part about collaboration. I mean, you hear one thing and then you kind of run it through your head and you go, hey, wait a minute, this might be better. And that's not always the case, but oftentimes, ideas will pop up like that. But those are the stuff. I was going to say, those things that I did when I was contributing to those, what seemed like small little bits, those are things that gave me confidence that, okay, my idea wasn't stupid, somebody liked it, or it was a good idea, or whatever. That gave me confidence then to kind of want to write stories. And I think that gave Mike Carlin, who was the editor, it gave him confidence that I maybe could be capable of writing a Superman story. So that's
the great Carlini. The
great
Carlini.
I mean, that's how I got the job, just by proving myself little by little.
Jerry,
sorry, Mario. Speaking of confidence about putting your ideas in the story, can you tell us about the whole or part of your contribution to the death of Superman? How did it came up?
There's a lot of, I mean, there's like a funny story that I just said, hey, let's kill him. And that's, I think.
Why did you do that?
That one was put on videotape, I guess, by Louise Simonson. And other people were like, yeah, that's what he did. But the story is a little more complicated. When we would have our meetings and we would discuss, we would have white board up in the, like, bunch of big pieces of paper that had each month of comics with boxes for Superman, Adventures of Superman, Action Comics, and Man of Steel. So we would go through these and fill in story ideas. That was what DC paid us to get all together to fill these ideas out. So when we'd walk in the room, it was like maybe we would do 8 months in advance. There would be 8 sheets of paper in the room, little boxes. And one of the meetings, I just came in and I said, well, let's make it easy. We'll put something on the board just to get everybody started. The very end of the last chart, I would write Superman dies, the end, as a joke, just to put it on there. So that's what that wound up being revived. At one point, somebody did say, well, there's Jerry's idea. Maybe this time Superman dies. And that's kind of how it happened. So it was something that I planted in previous meetings, I guess. And the whole story was, we couldn't figure it out because Dan Jurgens had come to the meeting and he wanted to do a big fight story because Marvel excelled at doing big fisticuffs, Kirby type action.
Yeah.
And he felt like the Superman books, because we were all trying to sell more comics, we were all doing really good stories that we liked, but we couldn't reach a younger audience, the teen audience that went to comic book stores. So we were trying to get that audience. And Dan said, look, everybody, Marvel does the big fights. We'll do the big fight. And we're like, we don't want to do a big mindless fight. And so we started working around it. It got rejected by the group. And then everybody's throwing in other ideas and they kept getting rejected. And the way I remember it is, like an hour or 2 hours into this meeting, I said, look, what if we revisit Dan's idea of the big fight, but we actually have consequences and not just be a big fight where there are empty buildings or it's the warehouse district that all the buildings were empty. We actually show people being displaced, their homes being destroyed, and not have it all be better in, like, next issue, look, Metropolis is rebuilt. That was my contribution, was to say we revisit it and we do a fight story, but we do it the way we do these stories and have it be about the characters and have it be about the emotion and the loss. And that was the whole thing about Superman. You know, you take him away and then you realize, wow, we just took him for granted. And that's a parallel to the comic. That was a parallel to the comic stores as well, because we felt like they didn't value the character as much as they should. So by taking him away, by killing him, everybody would go, wow, Superman was pretty cool. And that's exactly what happened, you know. So we got our wish.
It was a flaw. It was a flaw. Right. So I want to ask you a question. Just one question. I love the aftermath of the events of the death of Superman. So I'm reading right now the Funeral for a Friend. and I told Kyle that I loved that thing, because when I was a child, when I read this, I didn't I didn't knew that I didn't know that there was a sequels, or the story was incomplete.
Yeah.
So then when I realized that the then you showed us the other Supermans, the other four Supermen.
Right.
I was thrilled. I just am thrilled, and I'm thrilled right now because they are printing again these things here in Argentina, of course.
When we did the storyline, that was the whole point. The death of Superman was the event, and the meat of the story was the aftermath. Funeral for a Friend, World Without Superman. Those were like that was the interesting stuff. You know, it's like you had to have the big disaster for you to be able to tell a story about what happens without this character. How do the other characters try to compensate? And then you still have the mystery of what happened to Superman's body. You know, is he dead? Is he alive? I mean, those were fun things. When I left my final issue was always going to be Adventures of Superman number 500. In the U.S., it was the special issue where we brought him back. And then there's like one-page introductions of the four Supermen.
The first appearance.
Yeah. And so I was part of the meeting that set up that storyline with the four Supermen, but I read it as a fan and I enjoyed it at the time. I was just like very proud of my teammates because I thought it was an incredible story. I mean, the whole thing just played well. I read it issue by issue. I was just like, this is really a good way to bring him back, you know? So I still think that's like I mean, if they finally did the cartoon, I thought the cartoon version was pretty good that they did last year, I guess.
Yeah.
But those, again, with the cartoon, I was disappointed because they said, I remember reading, they're going to finally do the comic book this time, The Death of Superman. And to me, that meant that they would do, say, World Without Superman in between those, you know, like make it 3 movies and do the World Without Superman, but they kind of squished it down to just the basics. So in a way, the most interesting stuff was still, to me, the Funeral for a Friend and the World Without Superman, you know. But yeah, you can, I mean, as a person doing the comics, I feel like I've always been like a method, you know what a method actor, the idea of a method actor is somebody who just read the lines, but he tries to figure out motivations that don't even show and maybe build a history. I've always done that with story stuff. So I always feel like I can feel passionate about stories that I did because I lived them inside of me in a way, you know what I mean? Like even years later, 20, 30 years later, I still feel that kind of emotion of, you know, the Doomsday stuff, that whole storyline. So when I saw it in the movie, in the Batman versus Superman, I was floored because I never, even though they didn't do it exactly like the comics, I thought that they got the spirit of it right. Superman's sacrifice, you know, with the spear and pushing himself, you know, through Doomsday's spiked arm or whatever to get the spear all the way in. I mean, those were like, it's a beautiful sacrifice. You know, it was very emotional. I probably teared up in the theater as well every time I saw it. And that's the stuff that always got me. I mean, because that's what got me when you watch the Superman, the movie from 1978, there are still scenes in that movie that choke me up. Like when Clark Kent is walking with Pa Kent and Pa Kent is telling him what he thinks he could be doing with his power.
Exactly.
I feel so emotional because it feels real. Even though it's a fantasy, it has this feeling of, wow, this is real. And that same, you know, Clark Kent and Lois Lane, that dynamic and the fact that the love they have or the relationship, that's what makes all this stuff real or more real is that it's relatable. So that when I was working on Superman, that was part of the impetus for getting him engaged. It was the idea. We had done this whole storyline where Superman lost his powers, and while he's powerless, he thinks he's not going to get his powers back, and I'm gonna propose to Lois. I'm finally going to propose to her. And the way the story was the way I had originally plotted it, was that she was going to say, "Yeah, not this time. Good try."
Oh, it's so heartbreaking, Jerry. No,
put it in a nice way. But when I started working on the actual pages, I was drawing these pages and I was writing this, and I called up Mike Carlin like late at night. I said, "Hey, I feel like she should say yes." And he goes, "I see that. I could see that. Let me call Roger Stern," because Roger Stern was working on the issue that came out right after that, like a week later. So he got Roger in time, and then Roger was able to redo his story to have it be him revealing his identity to her, because you wouldn't want to start the relationship with a lie. But that stuff always came fairly organically, and you could have something written on your chart that you were supposed to do, but by the time you got to it, you'd go, maybe it should go this way instead of that way. And that also was what made that period of time working on those comics, on the characters, really gratifying. Because we had a great editor who was a good cheerleader. And both Jeanette Kahn and Paul Levitz and Dick Giordano, they were also totally on board. We felt like we had the support of everybody. We didn't have people going, you can't do that. You can't do this, So, but I know I'm long-winded. I'm long-winded here. I'm sorry.
No,
but there's a story that relates to the death of Superman. And this is what's kind of funny. I was looking through some old interviews I did back in around that time. And it reminded me that there was actually an incident before the death of Superman that we were at our meeting, and I don't know if when we introduced the Man of Steel comic, we did the Eradicator, and he was the Krypton Man first, the Krypton Man storyline. And when we were doing that, the Eradicator was just this artifact, and it was going to take over Superman, and he was going to become Kryptonian, and he was going to be like more of a hard ass kind of character, tough character with his black costume. And I remember very specifically at the meeting, I said, because we're talking to Jeanette Kahn, and she was the publisher, I said, can we change his costume? Because Superman's costume's iconic. I said, if we do this, could we just change his costume? And she said, I don't think so. It's not gonna be. We got licensing stuff. You just can't change the costume. So then I thought about it, and I said to Carlin, I just remember this. I remember thinking to myself, well, you know how psychology works is that you say, I want to do something that's worse, and then you come back to the one that's not as bad, and they go, oh yeah, go ahead, change the costume. And that was when I said, well, what if we said they were going to kill him?
You tricked.
And then Jeanette was like, oh no, you can change the costume for a couple of months.
Pure psychology.
So it was. You start with the mistake is starting with the thing you really want to do. You start with something really outrageous, and then that maybe conditions them to go, well, we're never going to do that, but we can let you change the costume. So that's how the Kryptonian Superman, the black costume, actually came to exist. Was just really a part of that meeting.
It was John Bogdanove design the black costume.
Oh, when he came back from the dead.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who did it first. If it was Dan, I don't remember if it was Dan or if it was John. But it's basically a black costume. When I did the Kryptonian man, or whatever we called him, when in the Superman with the Eradicator story, when he becomes more Kryptonian, I gave him a skin tight version of what Byrne had done with the robes, with the in the Man of Steel. He had the Kryptonians with the long flowing robes and his kind of cottony looking stuff. So I basically gave him that black costume, and I think that might have been the impetus for the other black costume, but it's just a black costume with a Superman S on it. It's not really a. I still remember like thinking the one thing I didn't like in the Return of Superman was the idea that Superman had that big gun, and I know why Dan did it. Dan did it because that's what all the characters. That was all the cool characters back then had the big giant guns, you know.
And the long hair.
The long hair, the giant gun, and a lot of pockets.
Yeah,
a lot of pockets.
He had the pockets.
Jerry,
what was in those pockets?
Did you enjoy that movie Shaquille O'Neal as Steel?
We actually attended a DC screening of that, and
oh my God,
it was an official DC screening for DC staff and John Bogdanov and Louise Simonson. So we were all trying to be nice to them, and it was really hard. It was really hard. We left that one kind of going, ooh.
Jerry, is it true that when you guys decided to kill Superman, it was because you actually wanted to Lois married Clark, and since the TV show The Adventures of Lois and Clark was doing it, you couldn't do it, so you decided to kill it.
Well, it was what happened, and again, it helps to go back to because I was asked a question like I don't remember a year ago for a documentary or something, and I decided I better go back and read it. I was looking at older material and I found an interview that sometimes, because over the years you kind of adopt this story that sometimes it's the one that was told the most or the one that you read the most. And I felt like I should do a little research. So I realized that was part of the same meeting. It was the second day of the meeting, the first day of the Superman story conference. We had come up with the whole wedding plan leading to the wedding. That was going to be Superman 75 was going to be the wedding issue. And then they were going to go on a honeymoon and, just this whole big storyline. So we did that on day one of our meeting. Day two, we come in and we find out that Mike Carlin and Jeanette, they had decided they thought it would be better to save the wedding because they'd run it past maybe the people who were doing the TV show. And they were like, yeah, we could do that. So Carlin thought it was a wasted opportunity. If we could do that during the TV show, we would get the extra publicity of the TV show doing the wedding. So for us, it was, oh man, we got to redo all these charts. So we had to throw out the whole day's work story-wise. So that added probably to or maybe some, grumpiness about it or whatever. But I don't think it was out and out like, well, now we're going to kill him. But it's a good story. I mean, it sounds fun, but I don't think that was really the case. It was just us trying to well, now what do? We came to this thing with this one really good idea. Now we have to come up with something else. So, but again, a lot of that stuff is very fluid. And the storyline, when we were talking about it, we had no idea that it would have much impact because most of us were comic fans. And we were aware that DC did imaginary stories where Superman died in the past.
Yeah.
So we didn't think it was going to break the world. It wasn't one of those like, oh my God, well, people will know this is comic books and people come back from the dead in comic books. We didn't think it was a big deal. So we were happy with what we came up with. And we'd even plotted out storylines in that aftermath where Clark Kent, is discovered in the rubble like 2 weeks later, because that actually does happen when the horrific event of an earthquake or something and a building goes down, people can somehow survive. And so we thought that was a plausible way for Clark Kent to have survived, which means that maybe we didn't even think Superman was going to be dead for very long, in the initial storyline. It wasn't like, oh, this is going to be going on for 4 months or something. It was like, oh no, of course he'd be back, because DC wouldn't let us kill him permanently. So after we did that, we all went home. We all started doing our books, keeping our deadlines and stuff. And then over that, maybe a couple of months later, when the comic books started, they promote them, like they sell them to the comic stores in advance, basically 3 or 4. At the time, it was 4-month advance. Oh. So the catalogs that had the storyline teased, Superman dies, that news got out to the mainstream media, and the mainstream media made a big thing of it. Newspaper in New York was called Newsday. I think it was a Long Island newspaper. Might have been the first one to break it. And then it went on the wire service, and then the TV network started picking up on it, and they fanned it into a big thing. Yeah. So by September, I guess it was early September, we wound up having to gather together for a secret meeting, a really quick meeting. And we realized this was going to be a bigger storyline. So we made the aftermath a little bit harder and a little bit more challenging. So, we didn't want to disappoint people. So we knew we had to rethink, okay, people thinking this Superman's dead. Maybe we can do a longer period of time and get DC to not publish a Superman comic, which is a big deal, so they put the Superman, it was a Superman special. There was a pinup book, and there was the News Time. It was a fake magazine.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
They did those to take the place of a couple, 1 month's worth of Superman comics, as a way to have them to have material to put out but the Superman titles actually stopped, which was a big thing. And that was a big thing for them to do it, Yeah. Especially the sales of Superman 75 and the ones tied into the death. So there was a leap of faith from DC's point of view too. And again, I don't think that could happen nowadays, because it happened organically as an offshoot of our own, with our editor, our own storylines. It wasn't planned out as a big company thing, which now it would have been a company thing. It would have been more corporate. And that doesn't mean it couldn't have been as good. It's just that it was more organic. I think it probably had the ability to address the media, and the fact that it was suddenly, otherwise you would just be like, yeah, we're just going with the story we originally conceived. This gave us the opportunity to kind of customize and make it a little more challenging for the readers. But it's like catching, the lightning in a bottle kind of thing. It just, nobody at DC thought it was going to be a big deal. Yeah. It wasn't a marketing success. It was really like a fluke, maybe slow news day. And it, no one could have predicted it. So, I mean, I think it holds up as a storyline, which is gratifying to me. It wasn't necessarily a stunt. It was meant to be an entertaining storyline. And I think, at any convention I go to, I always hear from people, oh, this was the first comic that I bought, or this is what got me into collecting comics. It's cool to hear that, all these years later, because it wasn't just, oh, somebody bought this comic thinking that it would be worth $5,000, in a year or something. It was that they liked the storyline. So.
Yeah, the big thing about the death of Superman event was that without the internet, it was a huge pop culture event. A huge pop TV. Superman was on the TV. Superman was on the radio. Was on the newspaper. Was on the magazine.
Right.
It was amazing. It was
all over the
amazing.
World. All over the world.
We here in Argentina knew that Superman died because it was on the TV. That was incredible.
In the media, the
media, it was incredible on the newspaper.
How old were either of you when that storyline came out?
I was 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, 10.
10. So that's like a good age to be, I guess, for it to seem like a big deal, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool, and that's what my experience is it's gratifying in that way, because you know that you reach somebody. Because I was 10 years old when I discovered Marvel Comics, and so that's my touchstone to think back on, that being that 10-year-old kid finding these comics that were like, oh my God, this just blew my mind. So I mean, that's, again, it feels like you pay it forward to a degree. I mean, when I was a kid, that one comic was Spider-Man walking away from his costume in the foreground. His costume was in the garbage can.
Spider-Man, Amazing Spider-Man 50.
Away. I was like 10 years old thinking, wait, a superhero can quit? This is like blew my mind, you know?
Well, as a matter of fact, I must say that I was 4 years old when I received my first comic book, and it was one of yours.
Really?
The Batman comic book adaptation.
Oh, the movie? Yeah.
The movie.
The amazing movie.
The amazing job that you did. That.
I think. I think it's the best movie adaptation ever written, because it was Denny O'Neill's script and gorgeously drawn by you. Gorgeously drawn by you. You nailed from the cover to the last page. You nailed it.
The theater, the first pages in the theater with the film.
Yeah.
It was spectacular. So my mom and my dad, they're sleeping right now, but we went together to the movie theater to see Batman in that time in 1989, and they bought me the comic book because it was there was a Batmania here in Argentina, just like in United States.
That's really cool. I mean, that was, again, when we worked on that, DC Comics was all in as a way. They worked the circulation, people who worked in the distribution side worked out a deal to have the movie theaters sell the comic, and they had to pay for each one of the little stands that went on the counter. It's like $5 American for each movie theater location to sell those comics. But the idea was, on the back of the comic, it had a comic store locator, a phone number, 800 number, that you could find a comic store near you. So if you were a kid and you got this at the movie theater and you didn't know about any comic stores or the idea that they existed, you could have your parents call that number, 1-800 whatever, and it would tell you, you could say whatever area you were living in, and it would tell you the nearest comic store. So that was a way of basically expanding the audience, and that was a big part of, because that movie was huge. And yeah, it was interesting to get reprint editions in virtually every language that was reprinted. The only thing I ever did, I think, that was reprinted in Japan, because the comics, they generally didn't reprint American comics there. They were very protective of their comics industry. So that was like unusual that book was allowed to be reprinted and published within Japan. But it was also, I think there was an Arabic version, which is, again, amazing. It just had amazing worldwide reach. And what a great ambassador for comics and for, that character to a worldwide audience. That was just, to me, that feels like a really cool part of what was already a neat project to do. The idea that, the fact that you guys got it, or you were able to buy it in a movie theater or whatever, that's kind of cool. That's almost unheard of, because that movie must have opened pretty much. I mean, I don't know if it opened in the United States. It opened in like early June of 1989.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't know, when did you guys see it? Like by summer? Late summer?
Just finishing the year here, and I think in November or December. November or December. November.
So it was already. I mean, it was already the world, or it was already a big hit by the time it was traveling everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, the comic arrived first here because it was
Earlier.
published by an Argentinian editorial called Perfil.
Oh, so you got a spoiler in a way. The comic spoiled the movie.
Yeah. I first read the comic book adaptation, and then I went to the movies. So it was like I already knew what happened, but I couldn't help it.
You could have told your friends, "Wait, you know what happens next?" And then the Joker's
so look what you
know. I can imagine the situation. I can imagine the situation. Hey man, spoiler alert! The Joker dies.
Oh no! Something bigger. The Joker shot. Bruce Wayne gets shot by the Joker. So it was interesting.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
No, we have to tell him, Kyle, that in 1989, previously the movie, they launched again on national television the 60s TV series. So it was a real hit for us. We have Batman everywhere.
Yeah.
We have Batman in the bathroom. So we have towels, action figures, toy cars, everything. El álbum de figuritas me sale. We have a trading cards, sticker albums, everything.
Here, it's funny because they, I think it was closer to when the second one came out. Batman, was it Batman Returns or
Batman Returns?
They did curtains and bedding. So I remember my wife was looking at a catalog and she said, "Hey, isn't that your artwork?" And it was the shot of Batman like swinging from the end of the comic. Maybe this later in the book, like where he's swinging with Gotham City behind him, and they used that figure, and they just repeated the pattern with a penguin shot from the second comic adaptation, but it was like on curtains, and it was on all kinds of like sheets and bedding and comforters. It was crazy. So, we, my wife like called the 800 number or something. And she said, or no, I forgot how she said, my husband did this. Is it possible? I know, in case it's sold out, can we buy one? And they said, "Oh no, we'll send you." So they sent us the comforter, they sent us the curtains, and the curtains are still hanging in my son's room, and the comforter is still on his bed. So it's cool. I mean, it's kind of cool when it's something practical like that. But they did Batman peanut butter, Batman cereal. It was crazy.
It was an amazing time, and as Mario said, here in Argentina was a bad fever with Adam West show on TV every day of the week, and the movie on the cinema. It was crazy.
When I was I would have been like 9 years old when the Batman show came on originally in the U.S. It was I still remember like January, I think, of 1966, and my brother, who was two years older than me, because he was my older brother and that close enough in age, but we were very competitive, and he was going to choose what we were going to watch, and we used to watch Lost in Space. It was on this, I think it was Batman was Wednesday and Thursday nights, so it ran in consecutive nights because there was a cliffhanger, and then they resolved it the next night. So on Wednesday night, it ran against Lost in Space, which was my favorite show, and we always watch Lost in Space. So my brother, he says, let's watch Batman. Let's try Batman. And I'm like, no, I want to watch Lost in Space. So we watched Batman, and I totally love Batman, and he didn't. So then it became like a fight. And it's just fun to think back on that. I mean, we also, I don't know if you guys know the TV show The Munsters?
Yeah, of course.
The Munsters was also, this was when it was new. The Munsters ran on Thursday. So I had to choose to not watch The Munsters because I had to watch Batman. And we didn't have, video recorders or any way to watch it. Then you had to watch it when it was on. Otherwise,
right.
You were a loser. You go to school the next day and everybody would say, you didn't see Batman? It's like, I was sick or something. You couldn't get away with it. So it was very much like a big phenomenon when that show in '66 hit the US. It was huge. And that was, again, 9 years old. That was my introduction to Batman, and I was immediately a big Batman fan until a year later when I felt like I'd grown up. I was then a Marvel fan. And Batman was for 9-year-olds.
Next, Mr. Ordway, I would like to speak about 2 great events you take part on that were Crisis on Infinite Earths and a special event very beloved here in Argentina that is 0 Hour. Let me put.
Go ahead.
Here, this is your illustration for the slipcase.
It was penciled by. My brain just went. I'm sorry. I apologize to the artist. She penciled Wonder Woman, and she's from Australia, and my brain is going. It's too late at night, I think. But anyways, I inked that. Last year, I think I inked it in June. One of those rush things. This was part of this is artwork that they wrapped around a box for a box set of Crisis hardcovers.
Yeah.
With all the Crisis crossovers. It was like it was like a $350 retail set.
Yeah.
But it was a comic box with, I think, 8 omnibus-sized volumes in it. And I got one for doing it. I got a sample copy, and I've never opened it. I brought it in the house.
like every omnibus on any collection.
It was so heavy. It must have weighed 100 pounds. I remember going to pick it up, and it was like, whoa! And I brought it in the house, and I kept thinking, I should open it. And now I feel like, wow, it's been over a year. Maybe I'll just leave it. I know what it looks like. But I don't know if I could. I made this with that image. Sorry, squeaky chair.
Whoa, so
Wait
cool.
Whoa.
I took the image and I put it on a travel mug.
Yeah,
so
perfect
cool.
for it.
So cool.
It's just great.
But now you have the image. You could do that. You could just get it printed on a travel mug. They're kind of cool. I mean,
yeah.
I'm saving the image now.
Well,
I'm robbing your idea.
Where did you find that image in color? Was that online?
It's online.
That's pretty cool though, because it's that if you have the image, the cup is so small that you could generally use it for, like, you could make a T-shirt with it. You just go through one of those online things. They'll make you, like, I just made a couple of cups. I gave one to my friend, and I was gonna try to get the address of the penciler. Why is she does a book with Greg Rucka. I can't.
I know.
Stupid. I feel bad now. I like her work. My brain is blanking on it. But anyways, I wanted to mail her one, but she's in Australia, so they've been sitting here, but it'll come to me. That's what it happens. It's like I've got too much information in my head, and it's squeezing everything else out. I say too much from the 60s.
Have you traveled to Argentina or not?
No, I have not.
Oh, we have a very good conventions here.
I just haven't been doing any travel. I got out of the habit of flying probably when my kids were little. The last time I spent a long period of time where I didn't even get on an airplane, and I just started doing conventions again a couple of years ago, maybe in 2013 or something.
Here's the name of the Nicola Scott.
Nicola Scott. Sorry, I apologize to Nicola, but she did an amazing job on those pencils. And the hard part was because I wasn't inking like in the old days. George Perez, I had his pages penciled, and I was just inking his pencils. Now everybody does stuff with blue line, especially since she's in Australia or whatever. So I got the files sent to me, but my printer can only print the maximum of 12 inches wide to print a blue line. So I had to print them in 3 separate stages. And the middle drawing, that middle piece, it's actually 3 pieces. The middle piece is very square. So I had to print it at a smaller scale, and I had to ink it with finer pens to match.
Oh my God.
It's nuts.
It's nuts.
She outdid George. I mean, because George is I've known George forever. George is like there's nobody like him as an artist or a writer. He's another guy who's amazing. But George draws he can draw down so small, the detail is so amazing. There's nobody who can get that amount of detail on a page. It's not just detail for the sake of detail. He puts so much content on a page that, like with Crisis, nobody else could have drawn that book. There's nobody who could have done it. I mean, John Byrne's capable of doing stuff like that, but nobody short of George has had I don't know how to put it. It's like, not only could he do it, but he wanted to do it, and he wanted to do it right. Because he was drawing characters that could have been like that big on the artboard, and they would have a face and they would have costume details. So I would be working on them, and I would pretty much know who I was supposed to be inking. It wasn't like any mystery. Nobody can do that. I mean, again, he would do like 12 panel pages like it was nobody's business, but those 12 panel pages had so much story. And he did that. Like Crisis was like 26 or 27 page issues when it was coming out originally. That was like 26, 27 pages per month of pages where maybe there would be one splash page with a big image, but the rest of it was all story, with hundreds of characters in costume, and they're all using their powers correctly. It's an amazing feat. People don't think seriously. Like you could say, do you know who this character or that character is? And I'd go, okay, I can visualize them, but I wouldn't offhand know how their powers worked or how their powers looked. You know what I mean? George was such a huge fan that he invested in that, and that's, I think, why the fans still respond to that book, is because there's never been a crossover done like that, and they've tried, and they've done great ones, but there's never been one that's been on that level. So I think so fulfilling for fans, for longtime fans, because every character is represented, and every character gets something good to do, even the minor characters. That's kind of crazy. So
I was gonna ask you about how was inking George, because of his very accurate drawings, where he can draw millions of characters in a page.
It's crazy,
and it's crazy. I can't imagine how hard can it be to ink a page of George.
Well, the key, and again, people are always like, they always feel like comics are about deadlines, and Crisis was a crossover that had to come out on time. They couldn't have shipped it a week late. They couldn't have shipped it a month late. Each issue had to come out on time because the entire company line, whatever, 40 other books that were coming out tied into it to the specific story that was going on in each of those issues. You know, first it was just the red skies, but then it was people coming in from different time frames. So it was important for that to come out on time. There's a huge amount of work from his point of view, from Marv's point of view, from the editorial point of view. I would get pages. It sounds crazy to think about it now. I had a studio in an office building. I would come in at 10 o'clock in the morning. There would be a FedEx package waiting that had been sent the day before. I'd open the FedEx package. Generally, there were 2 pages of pencils. I was paid to do finishes, so they were like a little rougher, but all the detail was in it. So I'd get 2 pages a day. I would have to ink those pages by the end of the day and FedEx the inked pages back to DC. Generally, that was how it worked. If I couldn't get both of them done, I had to send at least one or whatever. It was just that then they had to have it colored. They had to have, I mean, it was a whole production line. And and it couldn't have been done without that steady production because, 27 pages plus, George was doing the covers as well. I mean, it was a lot of work. So for my part of it, I had to ink 2 pages a day. If I had, and I didn't, like the whole month, I didn't necessarily have 2 pages every day, but it was whatever I got, I had to ink and send it back right away. So, and then we did that I worked on it from issue 5 through 12. And George had wanted me to do the history of the DC universe. It was like, well, here's what we're going to do afterwards. And I said, George, all I can think about is when I'm done,
just a joke.
I'm going to take a rest.
Okay, George, please.
Just 2 pages, one page.
Mercy.
So Carl Kiesel did a great job on the history of the DC universe. Carl Kiesel like that. But yeah, it was like, oh my God, it was strenuous. And that's what got me through Batman, because the Batman movie adaptation was even more stressful because I was penciling and inking it. And it was a 64-page book that we couldn't start too early because then we wouldn't have reference from the set. We couldn't start too late, obviously, because it had to be finished. And again, the lead time for the book, I started it in, I think, maybe the first week or second week of February. And I had to be done with it by like April 7th.
Oh.
So it was a march. It was crazy.
Tough.
So 64 pages, all the characters, all, likenesses or whatever, I had to be on a schedule and I had to get it done. So I kept saying, I survived the crisis. This isn't going to kill me. I'll be able to do it. I mean, that was the only thing. All you could do was look at what was the hardest thing you had done before that and say, well, that didn't kill me. I survived that. I really should have gotten a T-shirt that said, I survived the crisis on Infinite Earth.
Earth Prime.
Each time you have like a really hard project, it gives you like, well, I made it through that one. Well, I made it through this one, but it really never gets easier because, you're always your own worst critic and you're always competing with your past work to a degree too. So you're like, well, I got to do this. It's got to look good to me. And that's part of being an artist. You just never feel like you know what you're doing. You're always trying to maintain, but you also you don't want to fall off and you want it to be as good as or better than the last thing. And it's, sometimes you finish a job and you go, wow, that really sucked. That was terrible. And then you look at it 2 months later and you go, that's actually pretty good. Why can't I draw like that now?
It was difficult to draw Jack Nicholson.
They're all challenging because I didn't have. I mean, I think now it would be easier in a way, but also I wouldn't get the reference as easily. Like the editor, we'd mentioned
with the eyebrows,
The eyebrow.
The editor I had on the Batman,
and the smile.
he was a big movie fan, and he was a buddy of mine. So Jonathan Peterson, and Jonathan went the extra mile to get reference. And when we didn't get great reference, we didn't get everything, but he was really tenacious about bugging the studio. But they also, back then, you signed an agreement that, a confidentiality thing. You signed it at the beginning of the project, and it wasn't a problem. I did a comic, like a prequel for the Green Lantern movie, back when the Ryan Reynolds Green Lantern came out. And
I got it.
Well, I also worked on a prequel to the Man of Steel movie that was done,
I also got it.
Was done for Walmart, and it was a digital thing or something. So I did that, and I couldn't get reference from them, even though I'd signed the confidentiality. It was just, everything was tighter. Like, they would send me images with what they called watermark. So basically, they would put your name, like, across the whole image, which would obscure the image that you might be trying to use as reference. Like, wait, that went right across somebody's face, or costume detail or something. So it should be easier, but it wasn't. And with the Green Lantern and with the Man of Steel thing, I was finding reference for my story by looking at the trailers or the teaser trailers and going by frame and then doing a screen.
My God.
Because they would never give me reference. Like with the Man of Steel, I had to have Supergirl riding the giant creature, the flying kind of bat-like creature, and they didn't have reference for it. They didn't have anything they could share with. But it was in the trailer that was playing on TV or the commercial and in theaters. So I went on YouTube and I frame by frame, and it's like, well, there it is. It's not perfect, but at least it gives me an idea. And it shouldn't be like that. If you're a partner and you're doing something for them, it should be in their best interest to give you what you need. But we got that on Batman. We didn't get that anytime after that.
It's fine you say so, because the first thing they should know, it's for the merchandising and for the knowledge of the movie, they should have give you some directions.
Well, they share that with the toy manufacturers. I mean, the toys are made 6-8 months in advance, so the stuff is shared. But I mean, the problem is, like you had mentioned about the death of Superman, with the internet, it's harder to keep secrets, because
of course,
it's not just contained between 10 people. It's potentially hundreds of people or thousands of people, and everybody's signing a non-disclosure. Somebody's going to leak something, or somebody's going to do something without any consequence. And that's, I mean, I understand, like, even with the secrets of the death of Superman, who actually is any of the four guys really Superman, that information would be on the internet before the book came out. Or at the very least, somebody who got it 2 days earlier, who may be a comic store guy, would scan the whole book and put it online or something. I mean, everybody wants to spoil stuff, I mean, isn't it true? Don't you see that? Like when there's a movie or something and there's a spoiler in a movie, you have to avoid the internet almost totally, and then you have to see the movie the first chance you get, because someone's going to say, oh, here's what happens. So, I mean, it's just unfortunate, but
this is the cover we were speaking about. It's gorgeous. It's gorgeous.
Yeah,
I have
it's
it
amazing.
up on the wall back here. The art there.
It's
here. Wait, let's see if you can see it at all. I don't know if you can see it
in
the corner.
Let me remove the.
There it is.
Right above Billy Batson in here, right up there.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's
at the bottom. Yes,
see the purple up there.
There's the blue thing.
Amazing.
There's the Joker,
it's
and there's
Bruce Wayne.
Yep.
Alfred and Vicky Vale.
Yep. And Batman's kind of hidden behind Captain Marvel and Billy Batson, the statue. You see, I got a nice Superman sign too. That was a gift for my 30th birthday. Mike Zeck, and he organized it and got contributions from a bunch of my friends, and they surprised me with that. I can plug it in, and it's kind of cool. It's kind of like the 1940s kind of logo.
Oh my God!
Oh.
It's neat. So I've had that since.
It's amazing.
Did you meet Christopher Reeve?
I never met him, but I was in a room with him. We were at the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. had a Superman exhibit that ran for 1 year ran from June of I guess June of 87 through June of 88, and they had a big opening that we got to attend. It was me, Mike Carlin, John Byrne, Kurt Swan, Julie Schwartz, Murphy Anderson. It's like a bunch of so we all got to attend, and at one point while we were all hanging out, suddenly there's a big, like, what's going on? You see flash bulbs going off, lights flash and stuff, and it's like in comes Christopher Reeve and Margot Kidder, and at that point, John Byrne looks at me and he goes, "Well, I'm going to go meet them," and I was like, "Okay." So John like kind of works his way through the crowd, and then we're watching from a distance, and I think I have a picture of it. I took a picture from a distance, but at one point he made his way through everybody right up there, and shook Christopher Reeve's hand and said hi to Margot Kidder and all that. And I was standing there with Mike Carlin. I said, I'm not that forward, I'd like to do that, but that's not my personality. I would feel like I don't want to bother these guys. They don't know who I am. So instead, we wound up talking. Mike Carlin and I were hanging out with John Cryer, because
Lenny Luthor.
Baby Luthor.
Lenny Luthor.
Right, he was like Uncle Lex or something. It was like Luthor's nephew or something. So we were hanging out with him off in the corner that nobody cared about us,
Well, now he's Lex Luthor now.
Now he's
Lex Luthor. Really, yeah. Jerry, Kyle and I, we are big fans, but not big fans, but we love the Superman 4. It's I know it's not a good movie, but
no, but there's good things in it. There's good things in it. I mean, the sad part to me is that Christopher Reeve, he when the movies weren't great, he was still good. You know what I mean? He brought like this inner realism or believability to it. So even in like Superman 2, 3, 4, the movies never lived up to as good as he was, but there's still good moments. Like in Superman 3, there's the great scene with him splitting off and fighting himself. There's some nice scenes with him and Lana Lang. In Superman 4, there's some great scenes with him and Margot Kidder when he's sick, and she basically tells him, "Yeah, I kind of know you're Superman," all that stuff. Those are really great. And the beginning of it was great, where he takes all the nuclear weapons and throws them into the sun or whatever, and then speaks before the UN. I mean, that's what is good about it. The other stuff is like, there's not much you could do to save it, but he always brought the the performance, and he gave it a convincing believability, and that's a hard thing to do. I think Henry Cavill is really terrific, and I think a lot of people are polarized by other aspects, which I don't think he's in control of, because he didn't write the movies. But I thought he was great in Man of Steel. I mean, I think he's great as the character.
Did you meet him?
I did meet him, but for like 15 seconds. I got to meet the entire Justice League cast because it's like a once in a lifetime thing. There was a comic convention on Long Island in New York the week after the movie opened. It was the week. Yeah, it was the week after Justice League opened. The Ace Comic Con got the entire Justice League. They have, Cyborg and the Flash and Wonder Woman and Ben Affleck did not show up, so he was not there.
Oh,
but they had Henry Cavill and I think there was, I want to say maybe Jason Momoa. So you had that core group, and we were kind of, my friend who runs this Terrificon in Connecticut, he and I kind of wormed our way into getting pictures with everybody, including the group shot. And the interactions were just like, okay, stand over here, smile, and then the picture, and then you're okay, bye. So it wasn't anything, but I gave Henry Cavill a Superman drawing I did for him, and he seemed like very touched, but that was, again, a 15-second interaction. I had a Wonder Woman drawing for Gal, and I had to give it to somebody else. I wasn't allowed to hand anything to her because there was some kind of strict protocol. So I have no idea. I hope it got to her, but she was super nice. And, you could see, again, they're being paid for their photographs, or they're being paid whatever. They may be donating it to charity, but they all seemed really genuinely into it. They didn't seem like they were there grudgingly. They were super nice, and all of them were super, photogenic. I look at our pictures and it's like, how did we get that wrong? We're like, weird expression. And there's, Gal Gadot is like perfectly beautiful, and Henry Cavill's, handsome, and so the only one we had fun with, Jason Momoa, he was at the end of the day, and we just said, let's just do something funny, and so that they count down the picture, and we all went did a, and it just looked like we all looked like we were constipated,
You said, Jerry, you handled some drawings to Henry and Gal.
Yeah.
You did handle a drawing to Zachary Levi.
Oh yeah. I got to meet him. He was, probably because he wasn't on that same level or whatever, I got to talk to him at two shows. I saw him at Baltimore, and I'd asked the organizers of Baltimore, I said, if there's any chance, I would love to say hi to the guy or get a picture with him or something. They're like, no problem. So they just brought me over to him, and we chatted for 5 minutes on a Saturday of the Baltimore Comic Con. And then he had mentioned that he was going to be at the New York Comic Con in a week later. And I asked him, I said, did you ever see My Power of Shazam? I said, did DC ever send that? And he goes, no. She said, Jeff Johns only sent me the ones he did. And I said, well, I'll give you a copy. I have an extra copy of the hardcover. I'll bring it to you at New York. So he gave me his agent's number or whatever. So I showed up at the New York Comic Con, and I tracked him down, and he was so sweet. Really nice. I did a drawing of him in the book, and he got pictures of him holding it and me and him and everything. And, was really nice. And, he's interacted a little bit on Twitter. But again, you don't go into it thinking, here's my new best friend. That they're just limited interactions, and you're happy for them to get a picture. You know what I mean? The way that works, they see thousands and thousands of people. It's not like he might remember my name or something, but it's not like you're suddenly in the club, But yeah,
Jerry,
that type of thing is fun, and I've never expected, in a million years that I would even get to do a lot of that stuff. So it's fun to think back on and go, wow, I've met so many cool comic people. I got to know Jerry Siegel and his wife Joanne, and we were pen pals for like a period of time in the later '80s, and then we got to see him during the Superman days, and they were both very sweet, very nice people. I got to work with a bunch of of people. I got to ink a John Buscema Thor story back in 1999, which was one of those childhood things. John Buscema drawing Thor. Wow, that was so cool. I got to ink Gil Kane. I got to ink a bunch of people that were heroes of mine. I got to ink Jack Kirby.
Oh my God.
And I got to know. I mean, that was the cool thing back then. Like in the mid '80s, I started going to the San Diego Comic Con, and I knew Mark Evanier, and Mark was friendly with the Kirbys, so I was suddenly in with everybody. And you'd be sitting there having dinner with Jack and Roz, and it's like, wow, how surreal is this? And then,
almost like this.
Well,
for us, for two of us,
for the two of us,
surreal.
This is surreal.
I can't believe it.
For us and for the audience here too. The audience, they are saying to us, "I want an in. I want to talk with Jerry. No, wait a minute."
I mean, I'm no big deal. These guys were big deals. Kirby, what was funny about Kirby was sitting with him. We had gotten like in 80, I think it was 84, 85. He was doing Superpowers for DC Comics.
Oh.
And it was Jeanette Kahn had done a nice thing for the family. Basically, they never got equity in New Gods and all the creations that he did in the early 70s because that didn't exist at the time. So in 1984, they said, "Look, if you would write this Super Friend, like a Super Friends, it was Superpowers, thing, and it became a toy line. By doing that, they gave him his 10 or 15% equity in those characters. So they like making up for however many years previous. It was really cool. So we got to have a couple of meals with them, and one of them in Chicago at the Chicago Comic Con was hilarious because Jack Kirby, he grew up in the 1920s in New York, right? So we're at this restaurant, and it was themed after Chicago in the 1930s with the gangster era. It was almost like done as I don't know if you know what a speakeasy is. It was in the United States, liquor was illegal from like 1920s through 1933 or something. And so illegal bars called speakeasies would open up, and you would have to have a password, and they'd let you in, and you could drink. It was illegal. So this whole restaurant was set up like a 1930s place.
Oh,
and the girls dressed as flappers. They had the outfits from the 30s. The men wore the tuxedos, and it was a cool place. And so this unleashed all these stories from Jack's childhood. We're sitting there like listening to this stuff, and he's talking about when he was a kid, and his wife Roz was just always like, "They don't want to hear this." We're all sitting there, "Yes, please."
Yeah.
Come on.
So I mean, he told the same stories that are in print. You know what I mean? Like he had told them in interviews about how he was drafted into the army, and they gave him a rifle and a bar of chocolate, and they said, "Go kill Hitler." This was he told these stories in print, but he had all the same stories, and it was just fun. You know what I mean? It's the type of thing that it was just that perfect time because those guys were old timers when I was the young guy, but they were still doing stuff, and they were kind of enjoying their late life celebrity at these comic shows, and it was fun to see. It was really nice to see them get attention, and get treated like they were big deals because they were. But yeah, so
you are a big deal.
Are a big deal, of course.
Legendary kind.
Yeah. Well, for us, you are because we grew up with you. So this interview is touching for us.
Well, thank
because
you.
We grew up with you. with your drawings.
The one thing I think, and again, I was telling you, I always think of myself when I was a kid, and I think about how we're all like there's something that bonds comic fans, and there's like if anything is, they say nerds or whatever, it's more like a brotherhood, sisterhood.
Yeah.
I mean, it's open to anybody who feels attracted to the material. But I've never, in 40 years, I've had 99% positive interactions with people at comic book shows, with fans and all that stuff. And I really do feel that there's a kinship, especially the fact that I still buy comics. I still read stuff currently. I buy every week. I go to the comic store on Wednesdays when they have the new books and stuff. So I still feel like it's still something that I like, and it's something that I enjoy. But there is that bond. I mean, there's a bond between other people who read the stuff and like the stuff. Even if we don't agree on what we like, there's still like a sense of a kind of togetherness, I kind of wish, it's funny, I don't know, the shows being, all the shows being kind of done during the pandemic and all that. I mean, for me, I work alone at home, and going to the couple of shows that I drive to, my daughter goes with me, and we have a good time. It's mostly about meeting other fans or seeing creators that I know and people that I haven't seen in a while. And I think that's the hardest part about, now. Obviously, it's nice that I haven't gotten sick, or, none of my family's gotten sick, but, it is hard to be separate from your, you know what I mean? Like, those are connections, in-person connections that are nice,
Yes.
And you're not going to get, none of us we're not going to get this time back. It's basically like going to be a lost 2 years or something,
No.
That's the saddest part, That's the saddest part, because it's something that maybe here in Argentina we don't see it ending sooner. So
yeah,
it's something that will last, and it will change the history forever and the culture forever.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was thinking about that because I don't know, I feel conflicted even mentioning it, but I went to see the movie Tenet in theaters.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
In where I live, the theaters opened up in June, but then nobody was going and there weren't any new movies. And they set up all kinds of protocols, and there's hand sanitizer, and they block out seats so you're not sitting next to anybody. And they don't serve concessions. Nothing's in there. You really don't eat. You can't. So you're sitting there with your mask on, but you can at least watch a movie on a big screen. And it makes you realize how much you miss a lot of the everyday stuff, But I'm lucky in that our area has, everybody did the mask thing and everybody did the social distancing, and the rate's pretty low in our state. And it's a shame in a way that, I'm sure it's problematic everywhere, but it's like, if everybody did that, like in the United States, if all the states did this the same time we did it, starting in March, I think it would have gotten shrunk down. You know what I mean? I know there's still going to be cases, but it's unfortunate. And I don't know. Have you guys had, has it been really bad by you?
And globally not, but nowadays we reach the max of
the peak of the pandemic.
Of the pandemic, the max of the pandemic. So, but the pandemic taught us, and the pandemic do to us is we know each other, because we are from different places over the country of Argentina. He's from Buenos Aires, I'm from Rosario, and we create a brotherhood.
Yeah.
With him, with another guys. So that's the pros of
So
this
you can
pandemic.
you can even communicate with your through whatever StreamYard or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it helps. It helps. It does help. I mean, again, I mean, we kind of, I think, as human beings, you exist on those connections, and that's the hard part, I think. You know, but hopefully, we'll look back on this in 2022. I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be. I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic, but I do feel like it's not going to. I don't think it's going to go away in 6 months. I think it's going to be with us for a while. Unless something major happens. But the 1918 flu pandemic, I read about that, and that thing popped up from 1918, 1919. It was even showing up in 1921 and 22 in the States, which is pretty crazy. But this is like different,
Yeah. Jerry, returning to comics, I would like to ask you about these two last comics, and I don't want to bother you anymore. Zero Hour. Why I'm asking about this comic? Zero Hour here in Argentina has a publication history because there was an Argentinian editorial called Perfil who was gonna publish in the 90s. When it was supposed to be published, the editorial broke. So they didn't publish the comic. So years later, we received another copies from Mexico, from Spain, of Zero Hour, from United States, Zero Hour, and it was for me when I started reading comics with Death of Superman that I'm always saying that it's the stone that started all my collection, all my comic collection. This is the event that I first saw all the heroes get together. What can you tell us about the working process of Zero Hour?
Well, during that time, I know I'd gotten a call. I mean, Dan Jurgens and I always stayed in touch because we had known each other before Superman. We were friends. So I had, when I left Superman at the time in '93 or whatever it was, I was working on trying to finish Shazam because I had started the graphic novel. I'd started it in 1991. And it was painting full color pages. It was going really slowly. And so it was kind of a side project while I was still writing. Anyways, I wound up doing Wildstar, then I did Shazam. All this was going and floating around there, but my daughter had been born in '92, and I wanted to not be on deadline with drawing. I mean, when you're penciling a comic, it's a full month. There was just no time to enjoy family, whatever. I mean, you're really just under stress. So I'd stepped back from that for that reason, just to not have those deadlines hanging over, so I could be part of, my daughter's entire life. You know what I mean? Like when she's a baby and be part of changing diapers and all that stuff. I didn't want to just be the guy who was always working. So Dan would call me up and he'd try to entice me to do something or whatever. And at one point, he and I had done, I think it was before Zero Hour, he talked me into doing something for Valiant Comics. Valiant was doing like a big crossover or something. And then he said, I'm working on this thing for DC and why you could ink it. So that would be, do finishes or whatever. It wouldn't be as bad a deadline type thing. And, it's 5 issues. I forget what it was. Was it 5? or 43210. Yeah, so it was 5 issues. So I just said sure, and then, you know, just like everything, these things, you agree to it, and then they become much bigger than you thought they would be. But it was fun. I mean, I had no story input. He wrote it. He dealt with all the editors and the trying to figure out which characters they could use and what characters they could, you know, do damage to or whatever. You know, I felt like I was just a technician on it. So it was fun as a pure inking exercise. It was fun because I always liked working on Dan's stuff, and his pencils were always loose enough that they left room for me to put my mark on them. You know, so you could see me in those because it was finishes basically. The only I guess pertinent thing with that is when we were doing it, the Power SHAZAM was supposed to launch with the 0 issues. And I had been talked into writing the regular monthly series by Mike Carlin, who had taken over because Jonathan Peterson had gone off to, I think he went to Wildstorm, worked for Wildstorm during that time. So Carlin was going to edit it. And then, you know, we started working on the first issue, got the plot and everything, and it was going to launch that in the 0 month. And Mike Waringo was going to draw it, which was like, wow, perfect. And I don't know what happened with Mike, whether he was on the fence, but he and I had a long conversation, great conversation and everything. And then the next day he just quit before he did anything. He just left the project and he went and did like a Rogue miniseries, the X-Men character Rogue for Marvel, I think it was. And I understood that, but I felt like, well, we having lost him, we then lost the ability to launch with the 0 hour. So, because we had to start looking for somebody to draw it again. But it would have been ready to go. And I always wonder if it would have helped it in some way to have launched out of there, because Captain Marvel is kind of part of the 0 hour storyline. I mean, he at least shows up in it and is visible. But you know, that's life.
Was your idea the covers of the series, the layout for the cover, because they are awesome, and the idea of the covers going from the full cover to the white cover, the last one.
Oh yeah.
Was that your idea?
That was all Dan's idea. I think it was funny because, and again, it's funny because if you remember, the white cover, the blank cover opens up with like 3. I think the first page is totally blank with just balloons and then it slowly, I think by page 3, the drawing starts to come in a little bit. And I remember him having to argue with DC as to why we should get paid our penciling and inking rates for those pages, even though there wasn't any. It made sense, you know. I mean, it totally made sense, and he did win them over that we did get paid for penciling, inking that splash page, and I don't think we got paid for the cover. You know, that was just totally blank. But yeah, it's funny. Dan was always that type of guy. I mean, that's it's like the John Byrne thing where he's very, forceful about, I'm going to go meet Christopher Reeve. Well, Dan was always the guy. Dan was always good about, well, I don't like this deal. I want this, you got to make this deal better or whatever. I would just usually accept things, like if they said, here's how much a job pays or here's what your page rate is. I didn't usually fight it. But Dan was always very competitive in that way. It probably still is. So I always admired that in a way, because I don't really look for conflict. I'm happy to avoid conflict. It's just different personalities. I'm more like Clark Kent, than Bruce Wayne or Batman.
Now you mentioned Power of SHAZAM. We got the graphic novel, which introduced the character Black Adam,
yep.
and the regular that recently got collected on a trade, I think.
Or well, Hero is a hardcover. They finally collected the first 12 issues, plus the graphic novel, plus like one story that appeared in between, like a 7-page story that we did for Batman Superman magazine, which was a newsstand magazine published by Time, the Time Inc. They were a Time magazine company. Before Warner Brothers bought them, I guess this was kind of a bigger deal then. But yeah, the with the Shazam book, I agreed to do the covers, and I forced the issue with.
By the way, the best covers in comics I ever saw.
They weren't. There was nobody doing painted covers on regular comics back then, and it was not a thing because it was hard for them to do it production-wise because it required a different process than the flat color. They used to do flat coloring, which was different. So when I was doing the covers, I would do them full color, including the black ink line and stuff, and they would have to do a little slightly different process to get them to print ready or whatever. But I forced the issue. I said, look, if you want me to do it, I want to do these as painted covers. And they said, we don't have a budget for painted covers. So I had to, I said, I'm still going to do them in full color. Well, all we can do is we can pay you the rate that if you did flat color, which is a technical process. So it was, it's not much. So the regular cover rate plus like $100. And my painting rate at DC at the time, I think was pretty good. It was like $2,000 for a painted cover. But they used to only use those on the collections, back then. So they came back to me after I did it for like 4 months for the cheap rate. They said, well, look, we know you want to do it. We'll meet you halfway. So we'll give you a new cover rate for these covers. And it was like $1,000, which was at least better. I still put a lot more time into it than that. But I wanted it to look different when you saw it at the comic store. I wanted it to have that kind of, maybe even a 1940s kind of feel, that pulp kind of feel or whatever. But yeah, it was a struggle, but they were all cool with it. They were happy. They just couldn't figure out a way to pay me for it. So they did figure out that by issue 5 or 6, I think I was getting a better page rate for doing it, and that's when I stopped doing it. I tried to change it from that. I think issue 5, I tried to transition to where I didn't have an ink line, because initially I had to have kind of an ink line because the solicitation catalogs for the distributors were only printed in black and white, so they couldn't actually reproduce a painted cover. So I would just it's just crazy how I would do this. I would ink the image on the DC cover stock on the board. I would ink it as if it were going to be a pen and ink drawing, but I wouldn't fill in any of the black areas. I would just did a light ink thing, and then I would photocopy that and use a Sharpie marker and fill in the black areas so that they had something to reproduce it in black and white, and then I would just paint it. So I didn't have to do that extra step after a while because the catalogs then started being able to do color, solicitation. But yeah, it was fun. That was a good series to do. Mike Manley was the inker on it, and Mike he had been penciling. He penciled during the Batman death of the breaking of the back and all that. He was a penciler on that Batman stuff. But he and I had known each other for years, and he was just happy for a project that would be kind of fun to do. And Peter Krause, I'd worked with on one thing, and he did like a Superman fill-in at one point when I was working on writing the Adventures of Superman, I guess, towards the end. And so he was great. I mean, it was a nice team. Glenn Whitmore was the colorist, and Glenn had worked with us on the Superman stuff. And Mike Carlin was the editor. Chris Duffy was his assistant editor. Yeah, it was just a great group of people.
It's a gorgeous run. I got the 47 issues, and it's amazing. It's a very cool run for.
Well, that was inspired when I was doing it. There's a real polarizing aspect to Captain Marvel fandom back then, and the hardcore people were probably older than the target audience because they remembered Captain Marvel from like the 1950s, but they still liked the characters. So they didn't like anything that would change stuff. They hated change. So I was trying to kind of toe the line. I didn't want to do too much radical because, again, I thought the concept was great and it was just a way, all you had to do was refresh it, really. So what I did was to make him more relevant to me, I used the Spider-Man comics that I read when I was 10 years old. I used those Spider-Man comics as my template for how the tone should be because Spider-Man always had humor in it, but there was also drama. You know what I mean? It wasn't heavy duty. He was still a light character. He still made his wisecracks and stuff. And that was my template for doing it. And that's kind of the reason why I really wanted to get to issue 50 with Shazam because I really wanted to do that cover where he's walking away from his costume because of the Spider-Man cover that I did when I was a kid.
But you did it for a back issue magazine.
Well, I did it. Yeah, I did it as a commission for one of the fans of the book. But I wish I was so close. I mean, I got to issue 47, and I guess 48. I forget. But we did an annual, and we did the 1 million issue. So technically, I guess we came closer. But the issue 50 just seemed like from my 10-year-old brain, if something got to issue 50, it was a success. So that's what I was like thinking. It's like if I could get this book to issue 50, that would be the first time a Captain Marvel comic had gotten that many issues. You know, I still think DC should have kept publishing it. I would have stepped aside. They could have got a new team on it. I think the biggest problem with that character is that he hasn't been continuously published. You know, there have been these gaps where he'll be, you know, off the radar for like several years, and then you lose whatever momentum or whatever audience that might have been there. Characters like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, continuously published since the 1940s. There's something to that, you know. It gives them like a validity or something that Captain Marvel and Shazam, now Shazam, it never had, you know. But
Jerry,
you know,
what do you think about the change of the name of the character from Captain Marvel to Shazam?
I don't think they had any choice. I mean, they could have corrected it years earlier. Roy Thomas had proposed to them changing the name back to Captain Thunder, which was his original name in the first issue of Wiz Comics. It was before it was published officially. They did one just for the trademark office, and apparently they called him Captain Thunder. And then at some point they decided, it's Captain Marvel is better. So they could have gone back to Captain Thunder, and it would have had at least that history of it. But DC didn't want to do that at the time because they didn't have the dispute with Marvel. You know, at the time it was like they both coexisted. But Marvel has owned the trademark on that name since the 70s. So it's a tough situation that you can't promote the main title character of your own book. You know, I mean, the reason I came up with Power Shazam was because I thought it sounded better than just Shazam by itself, and it was very descriptive of the Shazam, the family. So Power Shazam felt like the right, you know, like a good enough title for sales, you know, and then we could still do the original Captain Marvel in the corner. But then after, I guess at a certain point, Marvel and DC stopped getting along on that because I think the Marvel was being gracious to allow it, but once, you know, Marvel management changed, I think they, you know, became a little less flexible about it because they're basically allowing their trademark to be diminished or having somebody else use it diminishes it. So there was no way out. I don't understand exactly how Shazam works for each of the characters. Like, is Mary Shazam? Is she
Mary Shazam?
Mary Marvel.
I mean, it's like confusing, right? It seems more confusing. It's like, wait, well, who's Shazam? Which one's Shazam? Who's Captain Marvel Jr.? He can't be Captain Marvel Jr.
CMJ.
Right. Well, I mean, I did that when I came up with that just because I wanted him to have his own identity. You know what I mean? As a hero, and in the later issues of the book, Mary got a white costume. Billy had his, he had the red one, and then Freddie had the blue one. So it was red, white, and blue as well, which I didn't intend, but I thought it would be good for Mary to have her own identity, to not be identical to Captain Marvel. And then Freddie already had a different color, so it was like CM3. At the time, it was kind of a thing for musical acts to do the abbreviations and stuff. It was the 90s.
When I read Shazam, Power of Shazam, I always think of it as a family movie.
Yeah.
Because it's a book about a family, and you got to introduce everyone from Tony, from Uncle Dudley, from
right.
everyone. That was a great victory, I think, because for the year that came out, it was like difficult for people to accept those characters and those iterations of the characters.
Well, I think the movie did a really good job of capturing the family aspect. I mean, they did a better job in some respects because they diversified it. You know what I mean? It wasn't just it wasn't like all white guys. Not the. I mean, that's the way I look at it. It's like DC's always been very, and again, I don't know if I'm being politically correct or not by using an old phrase, but we used to think of it as it was very white bread. Like Superman, there was no people of color in the cast in the comics. They were always. It just, to me, it was glaring because I grew up in a fairly diverse neighborhood, and when I was a kid, it was mostly Hispanics. That's really how where Gangbuster comes from, because I was
Jose Delgado.
My friends were all here. They were all Mexican, right? And now it's Hispanic, but they were my best friends. We hung out together. They ate at my house. I ate at their house. We just did everything together. So I just always felt like, of anybody, I mean, when they started throwing like people of color, they would put black people in, but there were hardly ever any Hispanics. And I mean, it's like, how can you be that colorblind to not, I mean, in the US, in every city, there's a huge diversity out there, So that was always I liked the character Jose Delgado, especially. I always felt like I invested a lot in making him a real character, but I also feel bad that the minute I was off Superman, that he was out of the books. You know what I mean? I understand how that works sometimes. Everybody's got a favorite that they do, but Bibbo kind of disappeared after a while too. But I always felt like Gamebuster, especially since DC had very few, they had like Vibe. There were not that many characters I felt like, represented. I mean, it's a big portion of the audience. And I always felt like when you're a kid, and I've had this conversation at comic book shows too, and I always find it's actually very touching. And it's like, I was talking to this, well, even like my daughter, girls were not treated well in comics either. You know what I mean? There, that period of the 90s, they were all like strippers or hooker looking, it was just over sexualized. And she was growing up in that time. There was no comic I could give her except maybe Archie comics. But, that audience has changed so much in the last, especially in the last 20 years, in the US especially, the audience as there's a ton of female readers. There's I think that the readership is very diverse, so it makes sense for the comics and the characters to be as well. So, and again, I'm not on any crusade about it, but it feels like you should reflect the world you live in. And some kid had come up to me at a show and was talking about how important it was to see characters that looked like him. And I thought that's absolutely right, and that's your audience. Yeah. You know what I mean? I mean, it's I'm not trying to be a crusader or anything. I just felt like in the sense of fairness, if you're a little kid and you see, Black Lightning or something, you go, wow, Black Lightning's like me or whatever, but it just could be a cool character, but someone's going to find some special meaning in it. Like I found special meaning in reading about, the Peter Parker or whatever, I mean, there's something that appeals to you about this stuff. And Jeanette Kahn was a big proponent of that. She was all in on that. And it feels like so much stuff that feel like advances back in the 90s, in the 80s and late 80s and 90s, a lot of the advances that we felt like we were accomplishing, they suddenly fell off the board somehow, and I don't know if it's just that people don't think of it, but now it's a bigger thing. So I'm sorry to go on. I'm doing like a speech.
No.
You spoke about the movie. Last time we met in 2013, I asked you about your fan casting for SHAZAM. Want to know your answer?
Did I say Brendan Fraser?
Look. This was your choice.
There you go. And they're still good choices. Brendan's aged out of it, but yeah. I mean, but you know what? I think it's funny too, because back then I was watching the show Chuck with my kids. My sons were really my son Tommy was very much. He and I watched it whenever it was on Monday nights or something when it was running. And I think when I heard about Zach Levi being cast, I was like, you know what? I can see it, not so much visually as much as, like you're not going to get somebody who looks like the character with the swooping kind of curved nose and the wavy hair, or whatever. That's almost less important than what they kind of embody. It kind of like Chris Evans doesn't necessarily look like Steve Rogers from the comics, but he embodied the character in a way that really made it special, And I think Zach does that kind of same thing. I mean, it's still going to depend on what they write. Like I don't know what the second movie is going to be about, but I think that he's got the right feel for it. And I mean, he can't do. Hopefully, he won't do the exact same thing in the second movie. Like he will have learned something, and maybe his character will grow a little bit. But for that debut, I thought he was perfect. And he's a big guy. I was really surprised when I met him, because I'm like, before I started shrinking with age, I was like 6'2.5", 6'2.5", and I went to meet Zach and shake his hand, and he got up from his little stool, and I was like, whoa, he's like 6'4".
Hello.
I'm not used to looking up, and you don't get that sense on this, like from watching the TV show Chuck, because apparently the other actors were all pretty tall. So I mean, it kind of made him seem, shorter than he was. But we even did. He did when I mentioned that to him, and we had the picture taken, he squatted down, so it looked like I was like a head taller than him. And then when I posted on Twitter, people were like going, "Oh my God, he's a shrimp. I thought he was a taller guy." And I'm like, no, it was a joke. And people were like, yeah, sure. They didn't believe it. And he did it on his own. So the next, when I met him at the New York show, we got another picture. I said, just don't goof around. People need to see it.
I think Kyle has the $1 million question.
What is that?
Which is?
You know what? The other the other power.
What do you think about The Rock?
Oh, about The Rock playing Black Adam? I was really I still think it'll be good, but that movie, I mean, how long is it going to be delayed? He's getting older. I think he can still do it, and he'll still be fine. But when I first heard about it was when he was cast first, and I don't know how much is written about it, but Zach was telling me that the movie almost got made years ago, and it was around that. It would have been probably around that 2013, somewhere in that. It almost happened. He said he auditioned at the time, so it would have been before he did the Thor movie. So it was before the Dark World, because he played.
Yes.
He replaced the guy playing Fafner, or what was it? Fandrel. So it was before that. He said he went in and he auditioned, and at the time it was going to be he said it was going to be Captain Marvel and Black Adam movie. And he said, this guy's just going to blow me off the screen. I don't really think I can do it. Because, I mean, it's true. I mean, The Rock is like a big personality as well. So he said he bailed on it. He said, nah. And then when they called him back after he was killed off in the Thor Ragnarok movie, which relieved him of his duties, he said that was the best thing that could have happened for him, because if they hadn't killed him off, he would have still been contractually obligated to that character. So they killed him off, and then he said he read for the Shazam thing, and it was like, oh, it's just going to be him, and it was like, oh, okay, I can do something to introduce my character. And but yeah, that the Rock has been attached for so long. It's hard to, it's weird to think about it, because his fame has gotten bigger than it was, 8 years ago. So in a way, he's gotten bigger than the character he's playing. I mean, he's more famous.
Yeah.
8 years ago, I mean, he's had nothing but movie successes in 8 years. So he's become a bigger and bigger star.
Yeah.
And he's so charismatic that.
Oh yeah.
He's bigger than everyone.
I would love to meet him, because he sounds like he has an uplifting story as well. His life story is pretty, interesting, and just coming from the wrestling world and having your father be a wrestler and all that. It's interesting. Plus he's kind of a dual heritage guy too, which is, I think that's kind of fascinating. Same with Jason Momoa. I mean, I think it adds an extra element if you're playing a character. Like, I think it gives, I don't know what you'd say, like almost like it makes you very distinct from probably anybody else who would have played that part, and the same will be true, I think, of Black Adam. As characters, that The Rock has a specific look. He has a whole, besides whatever he brings to it as far as an audience, I think he's got a certain intensity on screen that I could totally see him being like king of the world bad guy. You know what I mean? He thinks he's a good guy, but I could see him playing that really well. So I think it's also funny that I have no idea, but I keep thinking to myself, when they signed Henry Cavill back to play more Superman, but they didn't commit to movies, they were going to use him as guest stars. You can actually, this will be one we can interview me after Black Adam comes out. But I have a feeling,
of course.
And again, I
take your word, Jerry. I take your word.
If you're Black Adam, if you're doing that character and the audience doesn't really know who Black Adam is, who do you have him fight? Well, you have like 4 JSA guys, right, in the movie already. But I was thinking to myself, if you want to show a guy to be a real badass, you put him up against Superman. So and I don't know if this is true, but I keep thinking, when they first signed Cavill to the guest star parts as Superman, I was thinking to myself, well, if they put him in stuff, it would make perfect sense to put him in maybe at the end of a Black Adam movie or something, like, here's your immovable force. Well, hey, here's another immovable force, to set up just the power level, and make him, like, to give him like some standing within the DCU movie universe where nobody knows who he is. You know, it's like the quickest way to get a reputation is to knock down the biggest guy. You know, I mean, in the street fighting business. So if you use Superman in some aspect or in some way like that, have him go toe to toe, even briefly with Superman, you suddenly go, whoa, this character is more powerful than we would know otherwise, you know, because who knows how strong Hawkman is or who, you know what I'm saying? So that's my guess. And again, I could be totally wrong, but that's where I'm at as far as thinking about it.
Last question, Jerry, and we leave you in peace.
You're free to leave after that.
You're free to leave. What do you think about the Snyder Cut? On all this thing that HBO Max did and brought back all the original footage, the original cast, and put basically a new movie together.
Yeah.
What we saw in the trailer is a new movie.
Yeah, I'm all for it. I mean, I know again, but people have been polarized around and about Zack Snyder, but I think again his Superman, Man of Steel, Superman, and Justice League, they have a different flavor, and they're a different flavor from what Marvel's doing, but I don't see that as being bad. You know, I mean, a lot of people are down on it because of whatever, they have some bias of against him, but honestly, I like Man of Steel. I had a couple of misgivings about it, just like anybody would, but I liked it a lot. I liked Batman versus Superman. Had misgivings about the premise, but it won me over, you know. And I feel like if you read about what happened to the movie, to Justice League, it's like when they, I mean, this is a way of, to me, it feels like if I were transported back to 1980 and Richard Donner was given the opportunity to redo Superman 2 the way he was originally going to do it, and being able to bring the cast back and maybe add some shooting and stuff, I would be all for that, you know, because whenever somebody gets booted off of a set or the management decides we're going in a different direction, I know we promised you this, but we're doing this, I feel for that person on an artistic level. And I didn't think Justice League was terrible, but it wasn't the movie that he was planning because it was originally a 2-part movie, right?
Yes.
It was going to end on a cliffhanger, and it was going to continue in the second Justice League movie. And that all that went up in the air when AT&T was going to buy Warner Brothers, because I think they didn't want to have any possibility of like a $300 million budget hanging over that deal. In other words, you know, if they bought them when they originally were going to try to buy them, it would have been right around that time that the Justice League was coming out. So they wanted to tie up loose ends. They wanted to kind of do away with the big overall plan, which is what all this was leading to. So I'm happy that from what I understand, they've actually given them more money to complete special effects shots and to bring back the actors to do some shots that they would have done originally. The best case scenario is they do the Snyder Cut, it's successful, they put it out on Blu-ray as a 4-hour movie, whatever, and then maybe they go, wow, we got a good reaction to this, let's do part 2 like we were originally going to do it.
We want some.
You know what I mean? They got no Justice League on the boards right now. And I mean, again, everything fell apart after that because Affleck clearly signed on because he was in Zach's corner and they had planned out what they were going to do, and that changed. All these guys kind of got, you know, they don't have to hate Joss Whedon because he was just doing a job, but that's not what they signed on to, and that's not the script that they probably signed on to. So I think whatever they do, I mean, even if it's not quantitatively better, it could just be different. I'm all for it. I'd still want to see it, you know? And I'm anxious. I was sad that I have to wait till 2021 to see it, you know? But I'll be there. I've already got my HBO Max subscription, so.
Cool. Because we don't have it yet.
No. Have you guys seen the DC shows at all? The Doom Patrol or?
Yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen Titans and Doom Patrol, both of them?
Yes.
What do you think of those?
Kyle.
Well, I'm actually a Titans fan from the George and Wolfman era.
Yeah.
And the first season looked a lot like a Snyder film.
Yeah.
It has the style, the photography.
Yeah.
I was very happy to see something like that. With the second season of Titans, it was like, okay, let's smooth things up. Let's do something more like CW, and let's put Deathstroke on it to give it something better. And it was okay. I didn't like much, but the show that I really liked and loved was Stargirl. Stargirl was something that seems to have a huge heart on it, a huge love for the characters. It's something incredible.
We love it because it's very touching for us. Watching the heroes of Justice Society, because we love it. We love it, and it's the first time that we can actually have the formation, and also the Titans and Doom Patrol. Doom Patrol is very hard for us to watch. It's very hard, but it's good. It's a very good show. But Titans, they used very wrong Deathstroke. It's a great villain. So they use it so weakly. So for me, I didn't like that. But Stargirl,
I really liked Superboy on the Titans. That when they did the couple of standalone Superboy episodes, I was like, wow, these are the best. I really thought it was like the best of that CW, or not the CW, the DC universe stuff. The introduction of Superboy and those couple of episodes were so good. Yeah. And he really felt like it was the Jeff Johns run of Titans, obviously, where they made him into, a slightly different character or whatever. But I really liked it. And I did like, I was surprised that the second season resolved the first season seemed to be setting up that storyline with the
Trigon
and that whole thing, and I was surprised that they wrapped it up in that first episode or whatever. And it's like, they must.
Okay, it finished.
Yeah, but I liked a lot of it. I just felt like I was really disappointed at the last episode. I felt like they just wasted everything that they built up to with the last one, and because I talked to Jeff Johns about, like I said, after I sent him a message, he called me up and we talked for like 2 hours back in June, I think. And I told him, I said, I'm not trying to, I like your work. I like what you do. I thought the Titans, I actually liked it. It was a little dark, but I liked it. But I said, I really, really, really hated the end. And I said, it felt like you'd done a great job of building up to something, and then it failed in the mechanical part of it, like the staging itself of multiple characters in a fight. You know what I mean? Because that's when you do a comic book with a group of characters, you actually have to stage it so that everybody gets something to do, but it has to feel right. It's not like you don't want everybody standing around watching one guy doing all the fighting, because that's not realistic if you've got multiple characters fighting people. And I said it just felt like they dropped the ball in staging it so that all of the stuff they did fell flat, and it was like, that was stupid. And he goes, yeah, no, he said, that's why he was telling me that's why he wanted to, when they did Stargirl, he moved his family to Atlanta where they filmed it so that he could be the showrunner. So that he said that stuff, that day-to-day stuff, that if you're, 1,000 miles away, whatever, you don't really have the ability to course correct on set. He said, if you're the
control,
you can show up and say, no, you know what, that needs to be there, that needs to be, and sometimes it's simple, and that's why.
Oh, nos parece que perdimos.
Ah, pensé que me había perdido yo. No me diga que lo perdimos.
No me diga que lo perdimos.
No me diga que lo perdimos ahora.
Jerry.
¿Jerry?
Can you hear us? A ver si lo saco, espera.
Voy a volver a entrar. ¿Jerry?
Espera, le voy a escribir.
Dale. Yo puedo hacer un cortecito mientras. No me digas. Espero que la gente le haya disfrutado todo lo que estamos disfrutando nosotros. La verdad que es una...
Gente, perdón que no
entrevista.
pudimos responder los mensajes y
Sí.
las preguntas, pero nada, teníamos que aprovechar el como es el hype de tener a esta figura, esta leyenda acá, ¿no?
Sí. La verdad que es increíble lo que estamos. Kyle, te mandaste una patriada hermosa. Esto es hermoso lo que está pasando.
Mirá, y fíjate.
Mostró la face, ¿viste? Mostró la
face. Mostró la cara justamente. Y a Walter Gómez, usted se tiene que arrepentir de lo que dijo. Usted se tiene que arrepentir de lo que dijo. Yo lo leí, no dije nada, pero usted se tiene que arrepentir de lo que dijo. Porque le traigo contenido de calidad.
No, la verdad que es una entrevista hermosa la que estamos haciendo. Bueno, no sé, esperemos que se pueda volver a concretar.
A ver.
Mientras tanto, le agradecemos a todas las personas que están siguiendo el vivo. La verdad que fue un vivo hermoso, es un vivo hermoso. La estamos pasando fenómeno. Genial.
Sí, gente, la verdad que gracias por el apoyo.
¿Qué te puedo decir?
No, la verdad que nuestro fanboy interno fue... Me parece que nos quedamos sin Jerry.
Sí, no, parece que nos quedamos sin Jerry. ¿Qué les puedo decir? Yo la verdad que estoy choqueado, no sé si estoy choqueado, estoy bien, estoy mal, pero
Mirá,
en el sentido...
yo cumplo 41, me pone Walter Gómez.
Ah, mira.
También me siento abuelo. No, yo tengo menos de 41, así que
claro.
olvídate, no soy abuelo.
La verdad que es genial lo que nos pasó hoy con Jerry.
Esto, chicos, esto es en principio un... irán subirlo. Porque yo no escuché todo lo...
3 horas.
Salvo el inglés de Kyle Mario. No, hay subtítulos. Hay subtítulos, si no me equivoco. Si lo ponen, hay subtítulos.
Sí.
Este seguramente será el primero de varios que estoy preparando. Le agradezco a Mario que me dio una mano. La verdad que esto fue medio de improviso, por eso la verdad que...
Estábamos los dos, vamos a contar la cocina y todo esto. Estábamos en el sobre casi. O sea, vos en tu casa, yo en la mía estaba.
Yo estaba acostado mirando The Voice.
Yo no, yo estaba ahí tranquilo, viste, para irme al sobre. Y bueno, surgió esto y la verdad que es excelente. La verdad que nos divertimos muchísimo. Son casi 3 horas de transmisión y 3 horas riquísimas que nos llevamos de todo esto, de poder estar con un ídolo nuestro, un tipo que lo tuvimos en la infancia, ¿no, Cal?
No, es como yo siempre le dije, es una leyenda del cómic. Es una leyenda del cómic,
Sí,
es,
sí, sí.
es una persona que, un artista excelso que trabajó en Crisis, trabajó en Superman, trabajó en Zero Hour. No. Realmente
Hablamos de todo, ¿no?
hablamos de cine, hablamos de
De
todo, la verdad.
series, hablamos de Marvel, hablamos de DC, o sea, hicimos de Jack Kirby, tenemos unos highlights increíbles, todo esto, la verdad que está buenísimo. Pensé que el inglés mío iba a ser paupérrimo y por lo menos de a poco se estaba desempolvando. Bueno, ¿qué te puedo decir, Kai, querido? Esto es hermoso, muy lindo.
Sí, bueno, esta era, Mario ya lo sabía, era parte de un proyecto que hace rato que quería hacer, que yo ya lo venía haciendo por mi cuenta en otro momento, hace años. De hecho, ya a Jerry Orwell le había hecho una entrevista, y quiero volver a hacerlo y quiero traerles esto, quiero traerles esta posibilidad de hablar con esta gente. Que es una en un millón, muchachos. O sea, esto, poder hablar con Jerry Orway es algo que no.
Y que nos atendió así, que nos mostró sus cosas, sus joyas, que prendió el LED de Superman, ese que es increíble, nos contó un montón de cosas, de sus anécdotas con Kirby, bueno, yo la verdad, esto es un placer, un regalo en el alma, en el corazón, la verdad, te agradezco en el alma esto. No sé cómo te puedo pagar todo esto, pero la verdad que fue una... después lo hablamos. Pero no, en serio, es
Me
increíble
parece,
esto.
me parece que se le cayó internet,
Apa, apa, Lola.
porque había tenido problemas los últimos días y por eso se había pospuesto. De
Sí,
hecho,
exactamente.
la venía posponiendo, que había tenido problemas, pero bueno, a ver, no sé.
Les agradecemos un montón que se hayan quedado hasta esta hora viendo esta entrevista, que la verdad que,
Yo ahí le puse si podía volver para decir adiós.
claro, nada más que para eso y
Vamos a ver si les parece, le damos 10 minutitos,
sí,
hablando un poco de lo que se habló, para los que muchos no entendieron. Jerry habló prácticamente de toda su carrera. Habló
sí,
desde que empezó a leer cómics, desde sus contactos con Jack Kirby, desde cómo empezó a dibujar Superman, a trabajar con George Pérez,
con Mark Wolfman, que
con Mark
era
Waldman,
heavy,
que
sí,
era pesada la cosa. Pasamos por Zero Hour,
ujú.
habló de
Muerte,
Guardians,
la
habló
muerte de
de
Superman,
y todo lo que hablamos detrás de cámara, habló de Snyder Cut, habló de
hablamos de
Snyder
Rider Cat,
hablamos de
exactamente,
Snyder Cut, hablamos de SHAZAM,
de Superman del 70, bueno, de Superman 4 hablamos
Sí,
de,
Walter, es una pena porque justo estaba hablando de la serie de DC y estaba
mm,
mostrando su punto de vista.
sí, y
Este,
nos preguntó justo a nosotros.
sí, es una lástima, es una lástima. Habló de Black Adam, sí, la verdad, chicos, es una lástima que se haya
Se haya
caído. A ver,
cortado.
espera, a ver, que se mandó algo. Me parece,
Bueno,
Mario, me parece que no.
bueno, y sí, la verdad que sí. Bueno,
Cerramos, ¿te parece?
sí, cerramos.
Gente,
¿Qué
yo voy a
decirte?
poner el
Gracias.
banner, voy a poner el banner. Este fue el programa número 1 de protagonistas del cómic. Como invitado especial lo tuvo a Jerry Orway. Ustedes lo vieron acá, a este gran señor, este legendario artista del cómic. Lástima que no pudo despedirse.
Sí,
Ustedes saben cómo son estas cosas de la tecnología. Y nada, Gracias por estar ahí, gracias por el apoyo. Suscríbanse al canal, denle like al video porque la verdad que, como les dije, este contenido de calidad, con su like lo ayudan y lo promueven. Cuanto más se suscriban al canal y más apoyen el video, más contenido de calidad podemos traer. Así que bueno, este fue el inicio y esperemos que podamos seguir, Mario.
Sí, obviamente, les agradecemos muchísimo. Por favor, esto lo hace, obviamente yo no quiero hablar por él, pero lo sabe que esto lo hacemos de corazón. Así que, bueno, Kyle, es tuyo el canal y tu despedida.
Bueno, gente, Lanterns del sector 2814, gracias por estar ahí y espero que les haya gustado la sorpresa. Fue de improviso, la verdad fue de improviso, así que hasta siempre no, esa es la crisis. Hasta el próximo programa de protagonistas de cómics, gente.
Adiós.
Adiós.